Nobel experiment, Chapter 6. "You heard what I told you the other night," said Bob Coffey to his assistant, Sergeant Larry Stingler. "He'll do anything to nail Von Grunkle, and I'm using his own words. I've always told you, Colonel, your friend Brady goes to the extremes," said the stocky Stingler. "No, it used to be that he was just persistent, hard-working, but now he's obsessive, under a great deal of pressure. Why he keeps after Von Grunkle is beyond me." "True," said Stingler. "The doctor has done nothing illegal. You helped me check out some of those stories from back in 59 and 60, but Brady could never nail Von Grunkle. All those alleged payments to the Siders, another Brady lie. Well, we don't know it was a lie. More like a reasoned suspicion. But he never should have printed it. Maybe he thought he'd somehow crack Von Grunkle, I don't know. And this latest thing up in Tobin Falls, the landing has been vindicated by the nemesis of Bill Brady, Olin Von Grunkle. It's made all of Brady's years of reporting look ludicrous. No wonder Brady is tired and grasping for straws," said Coffey. He picked up the telephone and started dialing. "What are you calling, Colonel?" said Stingler, frowning. "I'm calling him. I want to see what happened to him the other night," said Coffey. "After all, he never came back to his seat at Von Grunkle's presentation." "A trusted friend you are," said Stingler with a mischievous grin. Coffey listened as the operator came over the line.
"I'm sorry. MR83192 has been disconnected."
"Disconnected? How? Why?"
"I'm sorry, sir. It was just disconnected."
"Well, that's a fine how do you do," said Coffey, setting down the telephone. "Disconnected? What do you know?" mumbled Stingler. "Probably didn't pay his bill, Bob." Coffey took out his address book and dialed the operator. She connected him with the Chicago Enterprise and Times, extension 1, the editor's office.
"Mr. Jackson's office, Miss Dugan speaking."
"Yes, Miss Dugan. This is Colonel Robert Coffey. I'm calling long distance from Washington, D.C. I'd like to speak to Mr. Jackson."
"One moment, please, Colonel."
"I don't understand this at all," said Coffey, cupping his hand over the mouthpiece. "That Brady, he's probably gone—"
"Hello, Bob,"
said Jackson on the other end. "Tom, how are you?"
"Still a little stunned, as we all are, I guess,"
confessed Jackson. "Stunned?" laughed Coffey. "What's the matter, the paper going under?"
"Yeah, you don't know, do you? You really don't know."
"Well, what's the mystery, Tom?"
"Bob, Bill Brady's being sought by the FBI, state, and local police."
"For what?" demanded Coffey as Stingler left the room.
"They have warrants out for transportation of heroin, transportation of jewelry valued at $3.2 million, resisting arrest, damage of private property, and murder, Bob."
"Murder?" shouted Coffey. He leaped to his feet. "Murder? I don't believe it. I just don't believe it, Tom."
"Calm down, Bob. Bill shot some underworld character named Salvatore Bishop. He and his brother run the rackets up here. Anyway, Bill owed them over $30,000. And from what I've been able to gather, they must have forced him to do those things. I mean, I can't even remotely Bill getting involved with the likes of Bishop. He's a little excessive, but he knows the difference between right and wrong."
"Tom, where is he? In jail?"
The cops claim he left the scene in some trash truck and is still at large. They checked the dumping station that night, but there was no sign of Bill."
"My God, Tom, I still can't believe this. Tom, you'll have to call me the minute you hear anything. Tell him I'll arrange for any legal fee for his defense."
"Well, that's nice of you, Bob, and I'll tell him if I ever hear from him again. But the paper's already looked into the charges with our legal staff. Doesn't look very promising. They could, with a great deal of luck, get him off on lesser charges. But murder could mean a manslaughter charge at the minimum. It doesn't look good."
"No, I should say not," said the befuddled Coffey.
"And there's the rumor that's all over town. Bishop's brother, Sidney, has put out the word on Brady. If Bill should call you, Bob, geez, tell him he's safer with the authorities."
"Of course, Tom," said Coffey, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I have to sort this thing out, Tom."
"I understand, Bob."
"I'll get back to you, and if he calls you—"
"I'll call you right away."
"Good," said Coffey.
"And I'll be talking to you later. Goodbye, Bob."
Goodbye, Tom, said Coffey. He set down the telephone once again and stared in shock across the room. In the other office to the rear, Stingler gently put down the receiver of the extension back on the hook. He stood quietly and slinked from the room. Once in the corridor, he ran to the staircase, opened the door, and leaped several steps at a time down 3 flights of stairs. When he entered the basement corridor, he went directly to a set of telephone booths in the shadows. Operator, station-to-station call to Mr. Olin Von Grunkle, Palace Inn, Frankfort, Kentucky. Number is JU71134, room 85. Stingler lit a cigarette as he waited.
Palace Inn?
Dr. Olin Von Grunkle, please, room 85.
1 minute, please,
said the desk clerk as Stingler inhaled.
85, this is Gunther Stein.
Gunther, it's Larry. Put Oli on at once.
Where are you, Larry?
Asked Gunther. Washington, now put him on, Gunther. Stingler puffed on the cigarette until it was bright red in the basement darkness. He exhaled slowly as Von Grunkle came on the line.
Larry, what can I do for you?
Ollie, sensational news.
Oh?
It's Brady. The authorities are after him.
For what?
Stolen jewels, heroin transportation, and a number of other things, including murder.
No, Brady? He's a thorn in my side, but he's not a thief or a murderer. He's finally snapped.
Right. He killed the brother of that mobster, Sidney Bishop.
Here's Brady now.
No one knows.
Well, Larry, I'd say our lives have been made considerably easier now. And you know what this means to our business dealings.
It means smooth sailing, Ollie. Smooth sailing right ahead. It was a little past 4 o'clock on Friday, July 19th, 1963, in Boise, Idaho. 2 days out of Chicago and a number of car rides later, Brady and Lorna had arrived in Boise, checking into a motel outside the city. Brady sat on a chair next to the bed, writing in his notebook at a furious pace, trying to recapture all the facts of the last few weeks. July 19th, 1963, Boise, Idaho. I'm convinced that the information given to me by David Todd has indeed a certain relevance. First, Harold Nolte appears to be the unidentified man found murdered in Indianapolis Tuesday afternoon. Nolte, with $3,000 in his pocket at the time of his death, must have been well off. My investigation, however, has posed additional questions. I visited a Mr. Schwartz at the retail outlet where David Todd said he saw Nolte working. Nolte did work there, but he was hardly well off, receiving $60 a week. And he only worked there for a short time, a matter of days, according to Mr. Schwartz. Schwartz was kind enough to give me Nolte's previous employer, Console Trucking, 667 South Main Street in Boise. This is the strange part. Nolte worked as a truck driver for Console for 28 years. He left Console on December 9th, 1962, for no apparent reason. This is why he grasped at the first job, which was at Schwartz's. It gets deeper. Nolte lived in a modest apartment for most of those 28 years, and as of 6 months ago, he drove a 1952 Buick. Nolte quit the outlet right away. It was at this time he moved into a more affluent section of the city. He purchased a 1963 Buick Electra, a more than modest type of car. All this seems to this reporter to be following a pattern. Nolte was killed, I'm supposing, on orders from Von Grunkle. Nolte must have known something about Von Grunkle. More than likely, he found something out at Console. I assume that Console is probably clear of whatever Von Grunkle is doing, but I can't be sure. And I cannot be sure whether Von Grunkle may have influenced Nolte's decision to leave both jobs. I feel strongly, however, and I've tried to put aside my past prejudices against Von Grunkle, that Nolte was successfully blackmailing Von Grunkle until the dam burst in Indianapolis. Nolte was killed and buried in a pauper's grave in Indianapolis, and Von Grunkle thinks he's in the clear now that Nolte is dead, or so he thinks. I must go to Console this afternoon and take any steps to find out what Nolte had on Von Grunkle. Perseverance. Lorna looked over his shoulder. When he finished writing, she picked up the pen and scrawled across the top, Brady's journal. There. she said, setting down the pen. Well, you must have been reading it. What do you think? Well, you're the reporter. Well, you're the 12-year-old with a 40-year-old mind. Well, there could be other explanations. What other explanations? Asked Brady, aggravated by her questioning his judgment. It's just that you're so tied up with getting Von Grunkle, you automatically assume that he had something to do with this. Oh, it's obvious, Lorna, replied Brady, standing quickly. I'm going over to Console Trucking anyways. He picked up his pen and began scribbling on another sheet of paper. What's that? She asked. Bob Coffey's numbers. Top one is his home, bottom is his office. If I'm not back here, he said, looking at his watch, or I haven't called you by 7, you place a call to Coffey and read to him what I just wrote in that journal. Brady's journal. Yeah, Brady's journal. How can I give him the... Just read it, that's all, okay? Now stay here, watch television or something, he said as he picked up his newly laundered suit. I'll be back, he said succinctly, still upset at her doubts. He opened the door and left the motel room. The main office of Console Trucking was located on the 3rd floor of a white, turn-of-the-century building in the heart of the city. It was nearing 5 o'clock when Brady stood inside a rising open-air elevator in the center of the building. The operator brought it to a stop and pulled the brass gate open. Brady walked out into a narrow corridor with white hanging lights. At the end was a door with a huge translucent glass sheet with letters, Console Trucking, stenciled boldly across its surface. He opened the large door. A receptionist looked up from a tiny desk to his left in what appeared to be an outer office. Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, answered Brady. We're just getting ready to close, sir, she advised him. Well, I wanted a word with the freight manager concerning overdue claims. He lied most convincingly. Mr. Nelson isn't available at the present time. I can, You mean to tell me that Nelson sent me 50 miles down here for nothing? He told me to come late afternoon. For God's sake, I have to go back to the motel and wait until Monday? No, please, she reassured him. I didn't realize that. What is your name, sir? DiCarliano. DiCarliano, Butch DiCarliano. Well, please have a seat there, Mr. DiCarliano, she said as she hurried down a corridor leading to a set of offices. When she closed the door, Brady ran across the room to a supply closet that was next to the filing cabinets. He stuffed his body in between the shelves of adding machine tape and carbon paper. Reaching forward, he pulled the door shut. Despite all that he had gone through, the additional charge of breaking and entering would make little difference. But he was still extremely nervous, the sweat beginning to build under his clothes. He knew he must fight to stay in control because a blackout could ruin everything.
Butch who?
He heard Nelson yell from back.
Well, where the hell is he, Gale?
He asked, entering the front office. Well, he was just here, Mr. Nelson. He was very upset. He must have gone back to his motel.
Well, the hell with him then,
blasted Nelson. It's Friday night. In fact, you might as well go yourself, Gale. I should change the tapes on the machines for Monday, she said, sending a shivering wave across the room to the supplies closet where Brady was already short of breath.
No, they can wait. Go home, it's Friday.
Very well. He heard her go back to her desk, straighten a few papers, and grab something off the desk.
I'll see you on Monday, Gale,
he called, and Brady heard his footsteps trickle away into the rear offices.
And have a nice weekend.
Thank you. Good night. Brady heard glass rattle as the door closed. Now he was tensed, sitting tightly and hoping that Nelson would take his own advice and go home. The freight manager, however, was a diligent worker and kept pounding away at an adding machine, totaling bills and payments somewhere in the rear offices. 1 hour passed and then 2. Brady could not believe that the man was still within the offices of the trucking company. By now, he thought, his muscles cramping, that Lorna would have called Coffey, and his friend would know as much as he knew. And just as well, he would need Bob Coffey when this thing broke wide open. But the overriding pain in his muscles sliced throughout his body, and he wondered just how long he could endure cramped in the closet while the workaholic inside the office went at full pace. Lorna was baffled. Fear did not seem to be a part of her makeup. She sat next to the window of the motel room the curtains wide open to the sun-blazed plains. It was 7:15 and Brady had not contacted her. Something must have gone wrong. He must have been in trouble because of the break-in. She arose and went to the telephone. As she called out the numbers to the operator, she remained calm and waited silently until the call was put through. Coffey was seated behind his desk with his aide Stingler by his side. It was well past 10 on the East Coast. They had stayed up late in order to discuss the ceremonies they were having for Von Grunkle. 2 congressmen, both old friends, sat in front of him. "Bob," said the older member of the House, "I don't think it would be prudent for you to present Von Grunkle to the House of Representatives." "Why not, Congressman?" asked Stingler, equipped with a notepad and pencil. "Because, Sergeant, for years, Bob was a strong and outspoken critic of the doctor." "Come on, we all were," said the younger representative. "To tell you the truth, I'm still a little unsure of Von Grunkle. If it wasn't for Tobin Falls—" "Congressman, you've questioned him and others so many damn times," argued Stingler. Coffey, still distraught by Brady's actions, just sat and observed. "Well, that landing," said the older representative, "puts all those fool stories out with the rubbish. People look at him as some kind of messiah now, for God's sakes. The pariah who went through all the years was really Nobel." "Well, this is all academic," said Coffey, finally responding. "Who's going to present Von Grunkle to Congress?" "Well, what about the Speaker?" asked the younger man. No. They disagreed as the telephone rang. "Colonel Coffey speaking."
You don't know me, Colonel, but I'm calling on behalf of Bill Brady.
Coffey's expression drooped quickly. He gazed around the room at the other men, who were still engrossed in their conversation. Swallowing, he spoke into the telephone. "Yes, I'd be more than happy to talk with you on that issue, if you will please hold on. Please hold the phone. I will pick up the extension in the other room," said Coffey, putting her on hold. "If you gentlemen will excuse me, I'll just be a few minutes." "Problem, Bob?" "The only problem I'll have is when I tell Peg I'm going to work tomorrow." "Well, that is a problem," said the older man as they all laughed, except Stingler, who kept his eyes trained on Coffey as he left the room. "Who the devil is this?" asked Coffey as he picked up the extension.
I can't tell you that.
"Aren't you a little young to be—"
Never mind that, Colonel. You listen to me. Brady is onto something, a murder involving Von Grunkle's organization.
"Well, can't he speak for himself? He needs a child to speak for him?"
Do you want to know this or don't you?"
asked Coffey as he reached for a pencil and paper. Lorna read slowly and directly from the journal as Brady had instructed her. Coffey was silent all the way through, and his first reaction didn't address the Von Grunkle issue. "Well, where the hell is he? At that trucking place?"
"Yes."
"Doesn't he know the extent of the charges against him? I have a mind to call the—"
"Look, Colonel, Brady told me you were the only man he could trust. He may have something here. I don't know. Waiting a few days won't change what happened in Chicago."
"Very well, if Bill told you that," agreed Coffey, respecting Brady's longtime friendship. "What can I do?"
"Just hold this information until Brady gets back. If not, if something happens to him or whatever, you can do what you want."
"Well, I'm not going after Von Grunkle. The man is close to being a national hero. Now, where can I get a hold of you?" asked Coffey as he heard somebody pick up the extension.
"We're staying at the Ponderosa Lodge outside of Boise. Brady will be back soon, I hope."
Somebody put down the extension. "I'll be at my home shortly. Tell him my number is—"
"I've got your number, Colonel. Please keep this to yourself until he gets back to you."
"You have my word, or you can assure Brady of that," said Coffey. "Now, are you sure everything is all right?"
"Yes."
"Okay. If he needs anything, or you do, you call me right away."
"We will. Goodbye."
"Goodbye." Coffey set down the telephone and started to think. It was his opinion that Brady could be grasping at anything just to take Von Grunkle down with him. In fact, far from informing the authorities, Coffey was terrified that his own reputation would be in jeopardy any pronouncement against Von Grunkle. He rose and walked very slowly, still in a pensive mood as he entered his office. "Bob, we'll have the vice president introduce Von Grunkle. What do you think?" "What was that, Nick?" "Let Johnson do the introduction. He's big on space exploration and all that." "Yes, that would be good." You look sick, Bob. Phone conversation? No, I guess I'm just a little tired. Getting late, fellas, he replied with a phony grin. Well, we'll leave you to your own misery, said the older man as he rose. Our staffs will be over here at 9. Good, replied Coffee, limply shaking their hands. Larry will bring you downstairs. Take care, Bob. This is going to be an extravaganza without a hitch. Right, said Coffee routinely as they left the office. He sat down behind his desk and took out his tobacco pouch. Stuffing in the tobacco, he anticipated its cherry flavor. His feelings were split as he lit the pipe, puffing briskly. If he sent the police to Boise, Brady would be assured of temporary protection from the mob, but an eventual prison term would leave him wide open. Yet by not acting at all, he could be allowing Brady, whom he deemed unbalanced now, to commit another frenzied act. Coffee knew that underlying this was the fact that he was breaking the law because of a higher law of friendship. Stingler waved goodbye to the men as they walked out of the building and into the night. Quickly he returned to the offices upstairs. Coffee, smoking a pipe with his briefcase in hand, was preparing to leave. Larry, if you need me, I'll be at home, if you will walk up. By the way, yes, Colonel? When I was on the phone, who picked up on the extension? I didn't see anybody pick up on the extension, Colonel. Oh, okay. All right, I thought I heard something. Colonel, don't look so glum. Our division is going to be increased tenfold because of Tobin Falls, and all our salaries just as much, he said as Coffee walked toward the door. Good night, Larry, said Coffee, his mind swarming with other things. Nobel Experiment, Chapter 7. Stingler waited some time before he used the office telephone. The timing of his eavesdropping had been superb, and just those few words by someone on the other end made him very excited. He looked out the window, watching Coffee step into his Ford sedan under the parking lot lights. By the time the taillights of the Ford faded into the traffic, the operator was connecting a call to Von Grunkle. Gunther answered the phone. Shouted Gunther loudly into the telephone when Stingler told him that Brady was in Boise. Boise, I tell you, Gunther, you damn fool, put Von Grunkle on.
He's on the air, Larry.
Jeez, well, he's going to be 6 feet under if you don't get him on the phone. Gunther let the telephone dangle as he ran down the corridor of the television station, passing the sign on the air. He ran onto the stage of the small auditorium. Looking like a coach on the base pass, he besieged Von Grunkle with all sorts of bizarre signals. Sitting in a chair before an overflowing crowd, the doctor was in the midst of a response to a caller's question. He saw Gunther and merely shook his head until he saw him mouth the name Brady. Von Grunkle seemed startled. His head jumped as if he were a car hitting a bump on the road. If you would excuse me for a few moments, he said to the host. My aide will talk to you for a short time. I will be right back, I assure you. It's one of the benefits of live television, folks. Apparently the doctor has something else to attend to. Of course, we announced earlier that Dr. Von Grunkle has a wide variety of events scheduled in Washington this weekend, and no doubt he's checking on those plans right at this moment. Larry is on phone, Doctor, said Gunther as he passed Von Grunkle and sat in front of the cameras. Von Grunkle jaunted as fast as he could, his body creaking as he moved toward the telephone. Out of breath, he picked up the receiver and paused a few seconds before he spoke. Larry, what is this about Brady?
Ollie, he's in Boise, Idaho.
Oh, dear God, how did he find out about Boise?
I think we both know the answer to that, David Todd.
Where exactly is Brady now?
Some motel called the Ponderosa Lodge,
said Stingler.
You don't suppose he knows?
I don't know. We can't waste any more time.
What can we do to him? They'd trace it all back to us.
Yes, Larry, you're right. They would trace anything back to us. That is why I want you to place a call to Mr. Sidney Bishop in Chicago. You tell Mr. Bishop that useful bit of information you have on Brady. I thought you'd like that. Now make that call and we'll wait. Nelson had finally packed his briefcase, and Brady could hear him leaving the inner office. He heard the manager's footsteps slowly advancing across the wooden floor. Nelson moved toward the glass door, finally leaving and locking the door from the outside. Brady, biting his lip to combat the cramps in his neck and back, kept still, just to be sure that Nelson was gone. Amazingly, he stayed another 5 minutes, upon which he opened the door from the inside and literally fell onto the wooden office floor. "God!" he exclaimed, breathing haphazardly. He moved his tired neck and sore back ligaments rigorously as he stood on his feet. He reached to his left and flipped the switch for the overhead ceiling fan. Holding his aching shoulder, he rushed to the telephone and dialed the Ponderosa Lodge.
Hello?
"Lorna, this is Brady."
Brady, I just called Coffee. He seems very upset. I did what you said. I read everything in that journal. He wants you to call him, and he gave his word he won't call the authorities. Where are you?
"I just spent the last 2.5 hours in some supply closet," he said, still moving his neck. "I want you down here. There's nobody here now. I think it's better than your being alone at the motel all that time. I'll let you inside."
The white building we passed this afternoon, correct?
667 South Main Street, 3rd floor.
What if some alarm goes off?
No, I heard the guy lock the door, Lorna. It's all right. I want you here with me. This could take some time here in the office.
I'll knock twice.
Wonderful. Now be careful coming down here.
No, you be careful, Brady,
she said, hanging up the telephone. Brady stared at the receiver and smiled. He set down the telephone and looked around the dim light of the office. There was a filing cabinet next to the receptionist's desk, and one next to the stationery closet, both a possible source of information about Nolte. He went directly to the receptionist's cabinet, still having an aversion to the stationery closet. He reached over and pulled open the drawer, sifting through several categories until he came to the section marked Personnel. Rummaging through the folders, he came to his surprise, Nolte's folder. The mere fact that he had found a folder was significant. If Von Grunkle was involved in improprieties and was blackmailed by Nolte, it was only logical to assume that Consul would not leave any information about Nolte in their files. To do so would only implicate the company. Nolte, Harold Lester, born January 29, 1917, Butte, Montana. Every relevant piece of information seemed to be in the folder. Unlike the retail outlet, Nolte had put in a lengthy amount of service. His driving record was flawless and his attendance nearly perfect. The overall impression Brady got from the files was confusion. Nolte was long-term and had no reason for leaving. In fact, his stated reason was left blank on the file paper. Brady put the manila folder under his arm and shut the drawer. He headed for the inner offices, opened the door, and walked by Nelson's office. In front of him was a large office with 10 desks lit by 2 nightlights. In the corner was a bulky photocopy machine adjacent to the beige filing cabinets that lined the outer walls of the room. This was an area marked shipping records, a potential source for him. His first notion, however, was to copy Nolte's file, which he did on the machine, returning the file to the cabinet in the front office. He looked at his watch. Lorna would be at the door any minute, he thought, as he retreated to the records office. Nevertheless, he had to begin his search and went right to the desk, grabbing a high-intensity lamp. He pointed the beam at the cabinets. The drawers were labeled Old Bills of Lading for Consul Shipments. They were in chronological order, beginning with the previous week of July 13, 1963, and dating back as they ran along the wall to January of 1960. It would be a formidable task indeed if he were to spend the whole weekend sifting through all those files. The previous 6 months were useless to him. Nolte had left Consul by that time. Brady moved the light along the months, running his index finger under the white date labels. In a short time he had reached December 1962, a fateful month not only for Nolte but for him personally. It was the beginning of his great debt to Sidney Bishop, a debt which eventually would consume his well-furnished apartment, his showroom 1963 Corvette, and begin to shatter his unstable mind. He thumbed through the folders, each marked by individual days, coming to the one dated December 9th, the day Nolte left Console Trucking. Pulling out the folder, he placed it under the high-intensity lamp. Bill after bill revealed nothing until he noticed the bold signature of Harold Nolte at the end of one of the stacks. He had to question the fact that if such improprieties were taking place, the bills with Nolte's signature should not have been in the files. What it showed was a simple delivery from a food packer, Weston Dorrell Packing Company in Boise, to Wayside Garage in Junebug, Oregon. Upon closer examination, he could see that it wasn't that simple at all. The number of packages delivered was 154, an unusual shipment for a garage. He frowned, not comprehending the meaning of it as he heard 2 knocks on the outside door. He set the bill down and ran into the other room, unlocked the door, and quickly opened it. Lorna was standing in the hallway. "You find anything?" she whispered. "Yep," he said, locking the door once again. He led her into the rear offices. "The application is here in total, but look at this, December 9th. Lorna stared at the bill and shook her head. "Food shipments to a garage?" "Very perceptive, kid," he said as she handed the bill back to him. He went over to the adjacent cabinets, dragging the lamp along as he found sections for the accounts payable. As Lorna sat on one of the desks, Brady went through the entire month of December and then to January, and then he erupted. "Damn! Damn!" he shouted, jumping up and down. "Olin Corporation! Olin Corporation! That's Von Grunkle, Lorna! Olin Corporation!" "Is that Von Grunkle?" she asked as she leaped from the desk. She looked over at the paid bill. "They paid it, $18 freight." I knew it, damn it, I knew it," he said as if he had been vindicated after being proved wrong. "But Brady, this still doesn't show anything wrong," she said, holding his wrist. "Give me time, Lorna Doone, give me time," he said as he walked over to the photocopier. "Look, you just turn the key after putting the paper face down. I'm going through the bills of lading. I want you to copy the ones I give you, then check for the corresponding payment. Copy that one too, then put it back in the file. Do you think you can do that?" "Yeah, I can do that. Of course I can," she said, resenting his attitude. She walked over to the cabinets and put her arms across her chest as Brady looked at her. "Well?" "Oh," he said as he went back to the bills. They worked in conjunction for nearly 6 hours. Harold Nolte's name was on a majority of the bills of lading to Wayside Garage, Junebug, Oregon. Brady had gone back to the summer of 1960, and a definite pattern was emerging. The cargo was as diverse as he could have imagined. Steel frames from the Midwest, concrete from Maine, molded plastic computers from Massachusetts, computer cards, paint from Kansas City, and aircraft parts from Southern California. Even clothing from a tailor in Tulsa, Washington, as well as a shipment of modified foodstuffs. It was 2 o'clock on Saturday morning when Brady looked over to the tired Lorna as she copied the last payment record. "Everything billed to Olin Corporation," said Brady. "Look at this. I tell you, they faked the damn landing, and Nolte had figured it out last year. He knew what they were doing, Lorna. I don't know where the hell Junebug, Oregon is, but I'll bet my life it's just a gunshot's distance from Tobin Falls, California," he said as he thought about Von Grunkle. "That bastard, excuse my language, but he's getting richer and richer. Now he's famous and respected all over the globe, and he'll probably even have a place in history. Unless you call your editor right now," she said, lifting up the desk telephone. No, he might call the cops. Tom is too self-righteous about things. Puts law over friendship. Coffee I can still trust, he told her as he began to place the call to the operator. It was past 5 o'clock in the morning in Springfield, Virginia, outside Washington, D.C., and Bob Coffey couldn't sleep. He stood in the doorway of his kitchen watching the sun come up through the trees. Only the sound of the birds disturbed the early morning peace. When the telephone rang, he rushed over, catching it before it woke his wife. "Yes, Colonel Coffey here."
"Bob, it's Bill."
"Bill, my God, where are you, Bill?"
"Bob, I've found significant information concerning Von Grunkle."
There was a gap. Coffey did not know how to respond. He had heard Brady make such accusations dozens of times in the past from dozens of locations around the country. All of those times, however, he was not under the progressive strain that was evident from the incidents in Chicago. Coffee spoke as slowly and as sympathetically as he could to his troubled friend. "The girl read it to me, Bill."
No, Bob, nulty. I have all his freight records.
"You what?" asked Coffee. "You really didn't break in there."
No, I hid in there. Damn it, Bob. Nolte and the others have been delivering all the makings of that spaceship, the food, the parts, everything, to a place called Junebug, Oregon.
"Oh, Bill, for God's sakes, let sleeping dogs lie."
Bob, every one of those bills has been paid by Colin Corporation.
"Bill, you're under a lot of pressure. I can fly out there if you want. We'll talk about what happened in Chicago."
Screw Chicago, Coffee. Von Grunkle faked this whole alien thing, I tell you. When are you going to wake up to the fact there are no aliens? There are no aliens.
"Bill," said Coffee slowly, I really think maybe you should go down to the local police."
Well, I guess I can see who my real friends are. I thought you had more guts, Colonel. You're afraid to shake that job of yours. I have nothing more to say.
He yelled and he hung up. Coffee held the receiver for a few seconds and then set it back on the hook. He walked over to the open door, the situation having changed now, and he debated the desirability of calling the police. It seemed the logical course. He was very perturbed with Brady and his actions, including the break-in at Console. It was only the long bond between them that prevented Coffee from placing the call to turn Brady into the police. In Boise, Brady clenched both his fists. "Well, you blew that," scolded Lorna. "Well, what could I do? The guy thinks I'm nuts." "Well, what? I mean, look at it from his viewpoint. What you did in Chicago wouldn't get you the Citizen of the Year award, and you've cried wolf so many times about Von Grunkle. Sure, Coffee thinks you're out of your mind." Brady nodded his head. "Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right." "He needs these copies," said Brady, picking up the stack in his hand. "That's what I was going to tell you," she said. "You're right about Coffee, though. Above everything else, he is your friend, and he knows the whole Von Grunkle issue, and he knows who to call for action. And he's in a government job, Lorna. Military, no less. If I send him the copies, he might not be able to rock the boat until he had absolute proof." "What are the odds? You're a betting man, Brady. What are the odds?" "Could go either way. But if we don't send him the copies, Lorna, we'll reach a dead end." Lorna took out a large brown shipping envelope from one of the side desks and placed the copies inside. Using the shipping tape, they sealed the package and tied it to prevent ripping. Brady found a roll of stamps in the desk and placed more than enough postage over the package, and then he addressed it directly to Coffee's house in Virginia. With that accomplished, they put everything back where they had found it. Brady shut off the light and left the inner room. "This is really weird," she said as he led her through the hallway to the front office. "I believed it. I really believed it." "You believed what?" "The landing. It seemed so real. Them coming off the ramp and all the people they took with them. Guess I still want it to be real." "That's just it, Lorna. That's just it," said Brady as they came to the door. "People will believe what they truly hope for. They always have and they always will. Unfortunately, when that happens, the really important things get pushed aside." "Bill," she said, calling him by his first name, "I believe you even though no one else does, and I'll stay with you." "Well, thank you, Lorna Doone. That means everything to me right now," he said as he kissed her on the forehead and turned to unlock the door. They stepped into a narrow corridor. All the offices were closed now, and the only light came from the streetlights outside. They went softly down the dusty slate stairs and were quickly outside. The streets were deserted and the air was cool. Lorna found a nearby mailbox. Brady rushed over, held the package up in the air, and kissed it ceremoniously before he dropped it inside. Then he looked at the mailbox one final time, and they made their way back to the Ponderosa Lodge. 20 minutes later, close to 3 o'clock in the morning, they walked into the parking lot of the Ponderosa. The flashing vacancy sign was the only break of the stillness. They crossed the sand and walked up to the motel room. Brady pushed the key in the deadbolt and turned it very easily. He unlocked the lower lock and then stepped into the room. The television was still on and broadcasting a test pattern and emitting a signal tone. Lorna walked over to the bed and flung herself forward to rest, but Brady was still perplexed. "I locked that deadbolt," he said with a puzzled look. "So did I," she answered with her face to the blankets. Brady raised his eyebrows and darted for the curtains. A late-model sedan was racing into the sandy motel parking lot. Brady spun from the window, grabbing Lorna like a train, picking up a sack of mail. "What are you doing?" she yelled. He didn't answer as he rushed her out the back door. As he opened the door and was about to step outside, the men inside the sedan hurled a Molotov cocktail through the window of the room. The room burst into a rushing envelope of expanding fire, actually exerting a force against Brady as he leaped into the rear parking lot. Still holding on to Lorna, he struggled for a few feet and then dove to the ground, covering her as machine gun bullets riddled the burning room. Intense emotion sent his head spinning, and soon he was above their sprawled bodies. His world was consumed in a twinkling green madness as he sped away from the tragedy and into his nonsensical void. As the minutes seemed to drag by, he worried about Lorna in the rear parking lot and wondered how they had found him. It must have been coffee, he thought. He had to have called the authorities, and the mob had found out through their own sources. All his thoughts about coffee, however, were buried away as the stars now shined brightly overhead. "Up there in the sky," said the boy on horseback. "Jesus God!" exclaimed the rider as he jumped down to the ground with the boy. In the sky, 4 blurbs of aqua light were pursuing a 5th multicolored spot through the northern skies near the Big Dipper. Not only was the spectacle visually striking, but it was totally out of the realm of anything that Hank had ever seen. There was no doubt, as the light came closer to him, what they were witnessing was not a natural phenomenon. The light bedazzled them. The 5th light was becoming brighter and brighter as it reached the western skies. It took the form of a flowing band of multicolored lights with thousands of luminous blue rods extending at various lengths from all angles. Its speed seemed to be too great for its maneuverability, and some of the rods scraped against the peaks of the mountain range ahead. That triggered a violent explosion on the top of the peaks, throwing rock and debris across the plains. The ship continued, even more out of control now, tumbling as it roared directly over them, frightening them beyond comprehension. Now the other blotches of light appeared above the mountain. The 5 M-shaped vessels in a deep aqua glow capped a series of window openings in the lower dip of the M. The vessels seemed to slow above one of the mountains where the first ship had hit, and their glowing light vaguely outlined the mountain peaks. 5 ships hovered as the first elliptical ship headed right for the wagon. "What's happening, Mr. Hank?" asked the boy as they lay on their bellies. The rider pushed the boy's head to the dusty ground as the multicolored ship crashed into the plain some distance from them. At once the area became lighter than day, and the wagon train vaporized into a white fireball. Then the sound wave hit with the fury of a hell-inspired thunderstorm, the ground moving in compliance with the force of unbelievable energy. 4 of the other ships moved in an instant to a hovering position over the wreckage. "Mr. Hank!" "Shut up, boy, shut up!" said Hank as he watched the ships produce a wide dispersion of brilliant red energy, vaporizing any debris that remained from the crash. Their task seemingly complete, they moved back in less than a second to their hovering positions above the 2 mountain peaks. From the far end of the formation, one of the ships shot an expanding green beam directly at the rider and the boy. The twinkling green light, identical to the light at the beginning of Brady's blackout, filled every square inch of the space around them. The outer surroundings seemed to vanish into a gentle hum like that of 1,000 bees. They felt light, very light, as the sensation of gravity diminished into a completely weightless state. Within this environment of green light, Brady shot back into the void. After a considerable period of time, he was covering Lorna. His mind, however, was still immersed in this blackout. "They're going to take us," he yelled as the machine gun fire ceased. The sedan fishtailed across the sand and onto the highway. Brady arose, still delirious. "They're going to take us to the ship!" he cried as he ran over along the swimming pool and toward the open grassland. "Brady!" cried Lorna, running after him. "Brady, it's all over!" As the other guests evacuated their rooms, Brady ran from the motel property and into the shadows. Lorna followed after him, getting closer as he slipped on the prairie grass. The blackout had been so vivid, he had trouble discerning whether he was back in the desert or actually in the rear of the motel. He screamed as he fell on the grass, but she caught him, throwing her arms around his quivering body. "They'll kill us all, like they did them people in the wagons," he shouted, his eyes hysterical as he attempted to get to his feet. "No, Brady, no, no!" she shouted and slapped his face. The slap seemed to simmer him down, but he was still breathing as if he had just run a 4-minute mile. In the distance, not more than a few hundred yards, the Ponderosa Lodge blazed high into the night. Firemen and police cruisers were on the scene now, surrounded by a sizable crowd. It was at this time, as he saw the flames, that reality snapped back to him. He looked down at Lorna, more frightened by his odd behavior than by the attack. "I'm sorry, Lorna," he said as he sat down in the grass. "For what?" she asked softly as she studied his facial expressions. She was doubting his sanity, and he knew it. He was envisioning things that just did not exist. "For what, Brady? What are you sorry for?" "We could have been killed back there. My mind, I'm going crazy." "Never mind that," she said quickly. "Somebody tipped off Bishop, Brady." Coffee. "Maybe he alerted somebody by accident. If he called the police, Bishop could have found out." "Oh, I can't believe he'd do this to me, Lorna," as his mind drifted back to the spaceships in the desert. "Lorna, I think you should go back to your parents, not only because of what just happened over there, but—" "No, I can't go back. Don't you understand that?" she said in the dim orange firelight. "Lorna, can't you see I'm losing my mind? I'm convinced of that now. I'm not sane. The pressures have been too great." "Oh, come on, Brady, a few blackouts. You're bound to dream some things," she said convincingly, but no. That which you call a dream has continued exactly from where I left it off in Chicago. I, or whoever's on that horse, that Hank character, saw spaceships coming over a double-peaked mountain. One of them hit the mountain and spun off into the wagon train. Is that why you were yelling? Partially. These other ships, greenish blue, they came out of nowhere, scooped up the whole mess with some kind of red ray. It's all so real. And I was there. I could swear I was there. Sure, she said, holding his hand. These ships, they move so damn fast I couldn't even see them move. I just don't understand this. Sure, she said as tears came to her eyes. They set their sights on us, just like the light I've told you about. We were weightless, lifted away. I was scared, so scared, he said, looking at her with great consternation. You do believe me, don't you? Yes, I do. But we have to get out of here. Do you think I'm going insane? It really doesn't matter what I think right now, she said as she rose to her feet. The key is survival. Let's get out of here. A Nobel Experiment, Chapter 8. Coffee was late in getting to work on Monday morning. He had tried to read the Post as he sat with Peg. The problem of Bill Brady had been plaguing him all day and night. He hadn't mentioned anything about this to Peg. It was all bottled up inside of him, but he was on the verge of making a decision. He looked down at the multitude of stories on Von Grunkle. The words rang familiar. A man from the depths of despair, one who had stuck to his guns because he knew he was right. The brilliant foreseer of the future, Olin Von Grunkle. The praise continued throughout the paper and all over the media. This is what Coffee weighed against what his friend had told him from Boise in the bizarre early morning phone call. What Brady had mentioned seemed insignificant and probably unprovable. Coffee was deep in thought as the telephone rang and Peg got up to answer. He snapped out of his thinking, ran by her, and lifted the receiver. Well, excuse me, Bob, she smiled as he picked it up. Hello, Bob Coffee.
What the hell do you think you're doing?
Asked Brady on the other end. Brady, where are you?
Oh, where am I? I'm still alive. That's where I am.
I don't understand, confessed Coffee.
Oh, yeah? My motel room was just firebombed and shot up Saturday morning. We narrowly escaped.
My God, they tailed you.
No, Bob. There's no way they could have tailed me unless they were tipped off. Did you call the authorities?
Well, I was on the verge of calling them, Bill.
Then you haven't got the package.
Package? What package? Asked the colonel.
You should have it today. It'll be at your house. Contains copies of the bills of lading for Consol Trucking.
Bill, I'm trying to figure out how they found you in Boise. I haven't even told Peg.
Well, somebody knew, Bob. That's all I know. They could be tapping your phone right now. Look, you have to act once you get those copies. I'm a fugitive. I can't do anything, but you can.
I'll have to look at the bills.
Well, they'll give you a clear and concise record.
Well, that's true, of course, said Coffee. I want something more substantial, something concrete.
Then why don't you just go to Oregon?
Bill, I'll be run out of town if you're wrong. You know that, don't you? How many times have you been wrong about Von Grunkle? Brady seemed incensed and didn't speak for some time.
I'll be calling you back, Bob, in a few days. If you haven't acted by then I will.
That's an automatic capture for you, Bill.
Maybe, maybe not. I can make calls. Few days, Bob. You think about it when you get the package. Bye.
Hey, Bill, called Coffee. He set down the telephone and turned to Peg at the table. He's in trouble again, isn't he? She asked. Yeah, he's in trouble, Peg. Big trouble, said Coffee as the telephone rang once again. Hello, is that you, Bill?
This is Larry Stingler, Colonel.
Oh, Larry, yes, good morning, said Coffee.
Just who did you think was calling?
Asked Stingler. Oh, just a neighbor, Larry. Hey, I'm a little late here this morning. I should be in about 10.
Right, I was just calling, Colonel, about my trip.
What trip?
To Washington State. It's been 3 months since that sighting up in Durham.
When will you be back?
Oh, I should be back probably Wednesday night.
Have you discussed this with General Hunt?
Hunt, yeah, of course. Met with him this morning.
Well, I will need you back here by Thursday. We've got those congressional ceremonies for Von Grunkle. More planning still has to be done. When are you leaving? Will I see you at the office? I'm leaving about 10, sir. I doubt if you'll see me. Okay, Larry, then have a good time and stay out of trouble.
Yes, sir. Goodbye.
Goodbye, said Coffee as his wife came down the front hallway with a shipping envelope. Bob, the postman just... Let me see that, he said, grabbing it. I'm sorry, Peg. This is confidential. I've been waiting for it. Does it have to do with Bill Brady? Yes, he said as he walked down the hall and into the den, closing the doors behind him. He opened the package right away, hoping that his friend might have some credibility. Everything was there just as Brady said it would be. Coffee read the documents very carefully, and he recognized the pattern. He had no proof, however, that the man killed in Indianapolis was indeed Harold Nolte, the truck driver from Consol. In fact, he wasn't even sure that a man was killed in Indianapolis. Could it be that Brady was so desperate that he would stick this whole scheme together just to fit his own means? He had known Brady well enough to at least give his ideas a hearing, but he was not going to risk his own career until he knew for sure. And the first step in that direction would be to do what Brady said and to travel to Junebug, Oregon. He would have to go on his own time and money to avoid being questioned by his superiors. Brady, he reasoned, could be given the benefit of the doubt, at least for the time being. First, he would have to get the time off from General Hunt. Coffee called the general's office immediately and, to his shock, found that Hunt had been on vacation for 3 days. He procured the number of a country store in a remote section of eastern Pennsylvania. It took several minutes until they got General Hunt to the telephone.
Bob, why is everyone calling me this morning? I'm trying to get away from it all.
General, I need some time off.
I need you in the office.
No, not until the end of the week, General. We just have to finish the final arrangements for Von Grunkle. Well, I'll be back by the end of the week. This vacation is doing me a world of good. General, did Sergeant Stingler call you this morning?
That's what I meant. I was no more than 100 yards on my way to the river after he called. Then you called.
So he called no more than 5 minutes ago, said Coffee, as his thoughts began to gel with doubt.
He told me that you ordered him him to Washington State. You did, didn't you?
Oh, yes, of course. I just talked to him myself, lied Coffee.
Well, you take your time off. Just make sure both of you are back at your desks on Thursday morning.
Yes, sir, thank you. And good luck fishing,
If I ever get there.
said Hunt as he hung up the telephone. Yes, goodbye, sir. Coffee was upset with Stingler and couldn't understand why the sergeant had lied. He thought about Stingler's overall personality, and it suddenly came to him. Stingler was one of the 3 men in his office when he received the call from Lorna. Stingler could have very easily been listening in, thought Coffee, as it was the only time the Ponderosa Lodge had been mentioned. But that would link his aide, an aide who had always been remote to him personally, to Von Grunkle or the underworld. The more he thought about it, the more he doubted Stingler. Just minutes before, Stingler had demanded to know why he had answered the telephone asking for Bill. Coffee picked up the telephone and began to dial the various airlines inquiring about the passenger list. If Coffee had his doubts about Stingler, they were confirmed along with Stingler's reservation on Pan American Flight 267. The destination was not Washington State, but Portland, Oregon. He could see from his atlas map that Portland was just 42 miles from Junebug. It was all beginning to make sense now, including Brady's photocopies. In a matter of minutes, Coffee changed into his golf clothes, as he called them, a red baseball cap, a casual blue shirt, and white pants. He would be aboard an Air Force jet and arrive in Portland 1/2 hour ahead of Stingler. From Portland, he had procured a shuttle flight to Appleton, 5 miles north of Junebug. He would wait at the airport and see if his aide would walk off the incoming shuttle flight. If Stingler was not aboard, Coffee planned to go to Junebug and snoop around the garage, the destination of the various shipments. As the jet lifted from the runway, he held his briefcase with the photocopies inside. He could not help thinking where Brady was and what his next move would be. Brady and Lorna sat on the bed of a pickup as it crossed the Bay Bridge from Oakland to San Francisco. The city loomed in front of them as they approached Treasure Island, midway across the bay from Oakland. Brady had plans to recover the time capsule, even though he had no idea how to get to Johnson's office on South Pasadena Boulevard. If money was waiting for them, he'd somehow get a forged passport. Lorna had argued about going with him, but he was set against it. It had touched off bitter feelings, and Brady was in deep depression about his own mental state. Brady sat in the corner of the truck bed, his head propped in his hands, and paid no attention to her. "Maybe you're just a crazy, stupid fool," she said, trying to provoke him. "Oh, yeah?" he shouted as he got up in the moving truck. He had a suicidal lunacy in his eyes that she had probably never seen before. He began to shout, "You think I'm crazy!" His grip on her in reality grew weak as he fell to the metal bed of the truck. And then he rose above the truck. You could see the whole city, from Quake Tower to Telegraph Hill, the Golden Gate, Point Bonita to his right, and the blue Pacific beyond. Inevitably, he was propelled into the void. He retreated, secure in his nothingness. No one could harm him here, and no one could reach him. The frustration of the world was far behind him, and he knew in moments he would be in a weightless beam of green light. "Mr. Hank, where are we?" asked the boy as he floated near the rider. "Boy, you're asking me," he said as the sensation of gravity slowly reappeared. They came to rest on a smooth platform. It was entirely reflective, as were the surrounding cylindrical walls. The green light had slowly dissipated, and the boy stood. Hank got to his feet and wiped the dust from his clothes. He gazed around the room, his eyes squinting in disbelief as the boy ran his fingers along the wall. "I can see myself," said the boy as he turned from his own reflection to Hank. "Think you're gonna see God Almighty, boy." "You mean we're dead, Mr. Hank?" "Well, what the hell else could it be?" The answer to his question was forthcoming. In a smooth motion, the walls of the cylinder began to move upward, revealing a white outer wall and an opening to a front room. Standing in the room, its walls filled with green corrugated holes, were 5 non-human creatures, studying the humans as if they had just stolen the neighbor's dog. The boy moved back next to Hank to observe the creatures. They had a deep pink skin and short blue hair. A soft texture like human hair covered the top of their slightly larger than human heads. Unlike a human's face, the skull moved inward from the temples into two wide and connecting eyebrows, leaving a patch of wrinkled pink forehead above. Their eyes were larger than human eyes, two black spheres with a wider human-like area. An extremely wide nose sloped downward like a man's nose, but was more like a pug nose. It only had one deep nostril. One of them seemed to be arguing with his peer, but turned quickly and smiled at Hank and the boy. His teeth were oversized and connected in one plate. Jockeying his heavy-set frame, he walked toward them, still smiling as not to frighten them.
"Whoa, we gotta be dead, boy,"
said the rider as he held the boy.
"I'm scared, Mr. Hank."
"Oh, so am I, boy, so am I." The creature, dressed in human-like clothing, moved closer. He wore a V-necked aqua jersey with an orange outer turtleneck garment. There were gold stripes on the orange jersey, perhaps designating a rank, as he had more stripes than the others. He neared them, extended his hand, and they gawked at his features. His elbow joint distorted as if it had been in a train wreck. His hand was similar to a human hand. Like everything else, it seemed oversized by human standards, and had two thumbs on either side, two index fingers and two maneuvering fingers. Black fingernails covered the top of the fingers all the way down to the first joint. In all, it was a very unsettling sight. The creature turned and called out to the other creatures.
"Kratchen blaka stare Goran. Goran."
Another one of them came running down with a small device looking like a music box and gave it to him. The creature made a slight adjustment and slid it across the reflective floor.
"Jimtivik horta sternum,"
he said, and then in English they heard his words coming from the device. It sounded very tinny.
"Please pick up the translator, please."
"Stay away, boy, stay away," said the rider as he moved forward, his eyes constantly gauging the creature's every move. He bent over and picked up the box.
"It's quite all right,"
said the creature.
"You're holding a device that will allow us to talk to you,"
he said, smiling broadly.
"Please let me apologize for the way that we've abducted you from the desert to our ship. I take full responsibility for what happened on your planet tonight."
"This don't look like no ship I've ever been on," said Hank as he looked at the device.
"No, I imagine it does not. Do you have names?"
"My name's Hank Brady, and this here is Jim Folsom."
"My name is Grok. I am the commander of the ship."
"Okay," said Hank. "So, this is your ship. Don't look like no ship. But if you say so, it's a ship. Just where the hell are you from there, Mr. Grok?"
"I am from the planet Mergendorf. This ship left the perimeter defenses on a purely reconnaissance mission to Norilon, Earth. You see, the elders of Bahrain have deemed the guardianship of your planet necessary. We are your guardians."
"Guardians from who?" asked the boy.
"From those who would interfere with the actual flowing of the history of any planet."
"What does that mean?" asked Hank.
"You will kindly step into the receiving area. I'll be more than happy to answer all your questions,"
Grok told them. "Come on, Mr. Hank," said the boy as he walked into the receiving area. The dusty cowboy, reluctant to modify his own simple lifestyle, stepped from the reflective platform. He found himself staring at the creatures. "Okay, Mr. Grok, here I am."
"Good. Before we leave, I will answer your question. Your actual flowing of history is the normal progression of life on a planet without any interference from outside life forms. We do not want to exert any outside influence on your planet's civilization, nor do we allow things to change as they are. It is against all that we Mergendorf hold sacred. That is why we call ourselves the Guardians of Earth. What you saw below was an example of this. A warlike race called the Renegades, from what you call the Antari system, has sent a fleet of 10 ships to Norilon,"
he said as a panel opened up in front of them.
"If you will please come with us, we'll get into the chute."
"Shoot? Who you gonna shoot? My rifle's back on my horse. If you don't..."
"No, shoot, Hank, shoot,"
said Grok as he pointed ahead.
"This will bring us very comfortably to the excursion tunnel. Then we will enter station number 6 entrance, which is inside the mountain hit by the renegades.
The Mergendorfs entered the bullet-shaped room, followed by the boy. The skeptical rider of the Rangers, carrying the translator device, shuffled forward. "The renegades, they came to kill us, they did?" asked Hank as the room sealed shut. This room was bathed in blue light as they now descended down the ship.
We have been persuaded to think so, Hank. 9 of their ships were confronted in deep space, well outside the boundaries of your own solar system. I'm sorry, this is my adjutant, Dorf Paris,
said Grok. "You're telling us that people live out in the stars?" asked Hank.
Of course, life abounds. Not all of it is intelligent life, and it varies in physical structure and culture. But there is life,
explained Grok. "When it is intelligent, it is similar in reasoning ability and innate intelligence."
Or lack in some cases,
said Paris. Grok returned the smile of his adjutant, reflecting their close relationship.
That's right, Paris. The renegades have shown a remarkable lack of intelligence as of late,
said Grok. The mustached Hank, the dirty-faced rider, was not laughing. He still felt unusually worried. "Just what are you going to do with us?" he asked Grok.
Oh, a very simple procedure. We use it to enforce the Valerian law among the dwarfs. Both of your memories of the past few hours will be altered and replaced with a new concept of your journey. It will make it suitable for you to continue your lives unobstructed, said Grok.
"Now, whatever you say," said Hank. "Just get me back to the range. Shit, I don't want to remember any of this." A series of melodic tones sounded in rapid succession as the room came to a stop.
We have arrived at our station. If you will follow me.
The chute opened and they walked into what looked like another receiving area with green corrugated walls. Grok pushed several buttons on the wall and it slid open. Side by sides, these humans and the Mergendorfs ambled into a long tunnel leading to the outside of the ship of station number 6. "What's out there?" asked the boy.
"This is the docking facility of station number 6,
said Grok as he walked ahead of them. "6?" asked the rider as they emerged into the carved-out innards of the mountain.
"We have 6 stations around your planet. They provide us with the data concerning your civilization without any interference. We have hundreds of scientists in these stations, studying a wide variety of earthly functions from social structure to archaeology."
Hank shook his head as he looked at the prodigious Mergendorf ship set in this sculptured interior. "Yeah, just get me that memory machine there, Mr. Grok. I don't want to know any more of this." Other, more slender Mergendorf, 5 or 6 inches taller than Grok, were evident in this portion of the station. They had the same short blue hair and brow line, but their features were longer and streamlined. "Are they Mergendorf?" asked the boy.
"Most assuredly they are Mergendorf, Jim,"
smiled Grok as he looked at his adjutant.
"They are females, the Edorfs."
"I ain't seen no woman like that since El Paso back in '67, laughed Hank. Grok tried to appreciate the amusement. He half smiled as he pointed to the tall gold door in the rock across the station.
"Over there is the station chute,"
said Grok as they crossed the docking area. "Is that station far from here?"
10 of your minutes, Hank Brady. 500 miles below your planet.
500 miles below the planet? How do you know my name?
We know everything about you.
The scene was fading for Bill Brady. He crossed into the void, this time with a new sense of being, enlivened by the discovery of the rider's identity, a man called Brady, a man that could very well be his ancestor. A Nobel Experiment, Chapter 9. When he awoke in the pickup truck, Lorna hovered over him. "Brady!" she yelled, with the sun in back of her flapping hair. Brady felt very contented, almost intoxicated. Another blackout. "Same as before?" "Yes and no. I saw the Mergendorf," he said. "The what?" "I understand it all now. I'm witnessing reality, Lorna. From the past, my past. My ancestor, Hank Brady, encountering an alien race called the Mergendorf. You saw actual aliens?" "Yeah. I tell you, I was in the body of Hank Brady, aboard an alien ship that was brought to an Earth station. They had 6 such stations on Earth, or Neuralon as they call it. I was wrong and I was right." "What?" "I was right. There are no UFOs because the Mergendorf are the guardians of Earth, and I was wrong because there are indeed aliens." "The guardians of what, Brady?" she asked. "Of Earth, Lorna," he said, sitting up against the side of the truck. "I think we both know where the answer lies." "The answer to what?" "The answer to my blackouts and more. The time capsule." The truck had pulled into the breakdown lane and stopped near the first exit. Brady hopped out and walked up to the driver's window. The driver, a tiny lady in her 50s, tipped her Giants hat. "You say you're going over to South Pasadena Boulevard," she said. "That's right," said Brady. "Johnson, Blair, and Yarrows." "What's the number, Sonny?" 415, called Lorna. 415, overdubbed Brady. Right. First go to the Lotta Fountain, we can take the cable up there. Let's see. Right in the corner of Geary, Kearney, and Market. So we find Kearney. No, you find Market. It's right down there. Just ask anybody, and hop on the cable car. And then to the fountain? Yes, right across from the Sheridan. Just follow Gary up 25 blocks. I'm not sure. That's South Pasadena. You'll have to find it from there. I have to go. Well, thanks for the ride, said Brady. The lady tipped her hat and the truck sped away. Brady looked down at Lorna. You get all that? Yeah, I got it, Brady, she said as they made their way off the highway. Well, I can't remember a damn thing. Something about a fountain. Brady, she frowned. We find Market. We take the cable to Lotta's fountain, next to Geary. We take Geary, 25 blocks or so to South Pasadena Boulevard. 415. Got it? Got it. Less than half an hour later, they were walking north along one of the many hills of the city. They were on South Pasadena Boulevard, a street lined with 19th century homes, almost glued together. The weather was extremely warm and Brady was dripping wet, huffing with his suit coat over his shoulder. Lorna waited up ahead, gazing down one of the streets overlooking the city. When will this end? He asked. Is this South Pasadena Boulevard? She pointed up to the street sign and then put her hands on her hips. I wish you'd let me go into that lawyer's office ahead of you, she told him seriously. You're 12 years old. So? No, said Brady, shaking his head. I'm going right in there and I'm getting that time capsule. But Brady, she said as she gritted her teeth, what about Bishop? What about the FBI? They're not stupid. They must have talked to Johnson. I know what I have to do, he said as he crossed the street. That capsule holds the key to all my blackouts. Your blackouts? She said, stopping. You just don't realize you're cracking up, she said. Brady could see a group of cars coming from the next traffic light. He took her by the hand and crossed the street. When they got to the other side, she continued. How do you even know there was a Hank Brady? Don't you think you're just longing for that? How can there be a Mergendorf, spaceships? There are no guardians of Earth. It's all in your mind. Hey, I don't have to listen to you. You better listen, Brady. I'm for getting that money if it's in the time capsule, money for you to leave the country. And then we can get somebody to help you with the blackouts. I am not crazy, Lorna, he said as he walked down the street. Wait, she called and walked alongside of him. Brady, the main objective, despite our different reasons, is to get that capsule. Let me go inside. No, he repeated, not even looking at her as he walked. He began checking the numbers on the building slowly as he reached 415. and looked up at the light blue three-story house of many varying angles. Putting on his suit coat, he climbed up the stairs to the porch. She kept pleading with him, but he opened the door and strutted into the lobby. "I want to see Mr. Johnson," he said to the woman behind the desk. The woman's face became terrified and her eyes bulged. Maybe she had been warned. As she backed up, hitting the chair against the next desk, Brady put his finger into the bottom of his suit coat to pretend that he had a gun. "I want to see Mr. Johnson now." I'll get Mr. Johnson." "Hurry up," said Brady as he thrust his finger to the edge of his coat. "Mr. Johnson! Mr. Johnson!" Seconds later, a bald man with bifocals came out of the back. He looked up from a stack of papers. "Yes, Fran, what up? Oh, I see we have company." "Damn right you got company," said Brady, trying to act as tough as possible. "Well, I've never been caught by a finger there, Mr. Brady," said Johnson. "Would be quite a unique experience." Brady looked down at the exposed finger, retracing it with a silly grin. Then he became extremely serious. "All right, Johnson. If your concern is with the authorities, Mr. Brady, don't be concerned. I would, however, be concerned with the criminal element. Informants talk, and somebody has talked. I would imagine that Mr. Bishop has already been alerted." "What about the capsule, Johnson? That's why we're here," demanded Brady as he stepped up to the lawyer. "How do I know you're the real Bill Brady? I have no proof," said Johnson. Brady was in no mood for second-guessing. He had convinced himself that he was the rightful owner of that time capsule. Almost frothing at the mouth, he took the older man by the collar. "You listen to me, Johnson. I want that capsule right now, so help me God, I'll break your neck." All right, said Johnson, choking as his face turned bright red. "Lorna, if he makes any calls..." She merely stared at him, seemingly unnerved by his frame of mind. Johnson led Brady down to his office. The attorney headed right for his wall safe, twisting the tumblers to the proper sequence as Brady waited anxiously. With the final number set in, he opened the safe and looked over at Brady. "Hold it, Johnson," said Brady. He ran over to the safe and stuck his hand inside. Feeling his way around, he grasped what felt like a revolver. "Very funny, Johnson," said Brady as he pulled the gun out and pointed it at the attorney. "You watch yourself," said the flustered attorney. Brady squinted as he reached in with his other hand, finally pulling out the glass capsule. It was about 1.5 feet long and 7 inches wide. There were sheets of bright yellow paper that shielded the inner contents. The top was sealed shut with a forced brass lid and wax underneath. He stood for moments on end and tried to visualize the contents. "Brady!" yelled Lorna as she sprinted down the hallway. "Bishop's guys! In a car! Outside!" "Go down the back stairs," gulped Johnson, motioning with his head. Brady, the time capsule under one arm and the gun in the other hand, pushed Lorna ahead of him as they leaped down the rear stairs. Brady opened the back door and stepped outside just as one of Bishop's men was coming around the side alley of the house. Brady pulled the trigger of the gun twice and the man fell back to the grass, the blood spurting from his neck. Lorna put her hands to her mouth as Brady ran over and picked up the man's gun. "Violence!" she said as she froze in horror, only to speak the simple words. "Violence begets violence." Brady heard her, but he was too intent on escaping. He shielded her body as they ran into the alleyway and back toward the street paralleling South Pasadena Boulevard. Shots rang out from the rear as 2 men ran out the back stairs of the attorney's office. Brady and Lorna turned at the corner of the sidewalk onto the next street. He kept between Lorna and the gunman as they crossed the busier roadway. More shots rang out as they reached the other side near a gas station. Brady instinctively fired at the running men. He turned to run again, but stopped where he stood. Lorna had been hit. She lay motionless in a pool of blood, soaking through her yellow sweatshirt. Although the traffic was now snarled and people streamed from their cars, he refused to think of his own safety. The 2 men, however, were not giving up despite the obstacles. They fired more shots across the street. Some people hit the ground or hid where they could. Brady stuffed the gun in his coat and lifted Lorna up around the pumps and into the station. Minutes passed and the gunfire finally ceased. The sound of an ambulance and police cars could be heard in the distance. Soon the first cruiser skidded into the station and officers pursued the attackers on foot. Several more cruisers appeared and other patrolmen went into the station. "Lorna, shouted Brady as the tears flowed down his half-shaven face. Lorna! Lorna! The crowd surrounded the entrance to the station. There was a buzz about the shooting. He saved that little girl's life. He saved that little girl's life, said one man. He did, I saw it, said the gasoline attendant as the policeman came to Brady. He carried her right inside under fire. She's gonna die, officer, cried Brady as he looked up. The ambulance is right outside, please, he cautioned, putting his hand on Brady's shoulder. No, she can't die, she can't die, repeated Brady over and over. Paramedics, carrying a folded stretcher, followed a large policeman through the crowd and up to the station. Both policemen moved Brady to the side as a doctor came in from the crowd. He knelt over and listened with a stethoscope. Erratic, I don't like it, he said. Lift her up, now, careful, he said as they hoisted her onto the stretcher and moved her to the door. Everyone back, yelled the officers. Everyone back. I want a blood match right now, said the doctor. And bring her to Seton General, he added, following them into the pathway through the crowd. Brady thought very clearly. It was, without a doubt, his fault for bringing her along anyway. Now it was out of his hands. Brady looked out the station window at 4 or 5 cops conferring off to the left near a cruiser. They all turned toward Brady. One of the cops pointed, and he heard him shout, "There he is!" Somehow they had tracked him down. He turned and ran into the garage. He raced into the bathroom. Pushing the window open, he crawled through and out of the station. The hill dropped off dramatically to the rear, and he gained speed as he ran past the dozens of old rusted cars. In the distance, he could hear the ambulance siren rushing toward the hospital. He vaulted over a wooden fence and onto an asphalt parking lot in the next building. Darting quickly, he stayed out of range of the street. His legs began to ache as he kept running. All the while, the image of Lorna's body and the stains on the cement were fixated in his mind, and her words played over and over again with each shortened breath. Violence begets violence. Violence begets violence. He came to another road, capsule still under his arm. She could not have survived that shot. His legs began to cramp as they pounded against the pavement, but he kept running blindly. He turned right and ran for a few blocks and then turned left. Time was passing, showing its toll on him as he trudged into Chinatown. Stopping under a sign marked Far Eastern Cuisine, he leaned against a car. His only instinct now was to flee and keep fleeing. The traffic was backed up on the narrow street. He ran through it into a yellow taxi cab on the far side of the street. "Where to?" asked the driver as Brady just about fell into the back seat. "Out," he whispered, his throat dry and tight. "Out where, pal?" asked the driver, a toothpick between his teeth. "Out of the city, east, over the bridge to Oakland. Just keep driving." "That's your money, pal. I'll get you on the highway over the bridge, all right?" "Fine, fine," said Brady as the green light began to appear. He looked up to the stained glass of a Catholic church and felt himself go under. "500 miles below? We're below the earth?" said Hank Brady as he and the boy walked alongside of the Mergendorf.
Yes, 500. It'll only take a few minutes to get there.
"I suppose you guys ain't no liars if you could build a ship like that," he said, turning to the vessel one more time before they reached the station chute.
Let us step inside the chute,
said Grok as the gold door opened. They walked into another bullet-shaped room that was much larger than the ship's chute.
"Compensators on,"
ordered Grok.
"This will prevent any acceleration from lifting us to the top of the room."
"Just what's down there, Mr. Grok?" asked the boy as the room filled with blue light and they were rocketed into the Earth's interior.
"I was just going to tell you about that, Commander,"
interrupted Paris. But one of the lesser Mergendorfs spoke first.
"On August 31st, 1992, when Arpeg..."
Grok seized the young Mergendorf's neck and emitted a humming noise of displeasure from his lips. 1992? That's 116 years from now. What happens then? Asked Hank.
Nothing at all,
said Grack brashly.
That information is classified. This dwarf has spoken out of turn. He will be punished under the laws of Lorraine. Me,
responded the other dwarf, his lips now buzzing.
You are the one who has broken the laws by bringing the human on board the ship. It is forbidden. Silence,
replied Grok.
The attack was my fault. I take full responsibility for removing the human. If I had not let the renegade through, then they would not have... Commander?
Interrupted Paris.
He is only a second grade. You need not explain your motives to him. You're right,
said Grok, obviously feeling the guilt of having let the renegade ship slip through the defenses and thus dooming the members of the wagon train. The room flew through the tube into the Earth's crust at incredible speed. Grok stayed in the corner for the rest of the trip downward. As the room slowed and the blue light subsided, he turned to his human guest. Are we here yet? Asked Hank.
Yes, we're here. Please proceed through. I want to waste no time,
said Grok, his voice still upset. The wall slid open, revealing a carved open space deep within the earth. The area was 3 times as large as the extraordinary upper docking station, terrace upon terrace, like a mountain that had been mined away. Dwarfs, both male and female, were all over the area, working with elaborate equipment as if they were ants on an earthen mound.
Take the second grade below. 3 days detention,
ordered Grok as they took the boisterous dwarf away.
Commander,
said Paris, calling Grok over as the humans gazed outward. Hank could just barely make out their human words.
Yes, Commander, I understand you're putting the second grade in detention. I must advise, however, that you are pushing the limits of the law by keeping these humans down here. They should not have heard about that important Earth date. You know we perimeter people don't hold the law like the others, Paris. If independent thinking is a sin, then I'm guilty of it. Better to be accused of that, in my opinion, than seeing the deaths of these humans. I don't mean to sound cruel, sir, but death might be simpler if the machine proved not to be 100% effective. It will be effective, Paris, it will,
said Grok as he moved forward.
Mr. Brady, you and the boy will come this way,
he said, pointing to a 5-story building to his left.
We can expedite the solution to this problem.
Are we really 500 miles below the Earth? Asked the boy.
Yes, we are,
said Grok seriously as he led them into the building. Hank was held inside an adjoining room to what Grok called the memory machine room. When he was brought into the blue-tiled room, the boy was nowhere to be found. He looked around and then turned to Grok. The Mergendorf commander now seemed very nervous. Now where's the boy? You send him back outside already?
Yes, the boy is done,
mumbled Grok. Well, I want to see the boy, demanded the suspicious rider.
That will not be possible,
said Grok as several dwarfs came forward and fitted Hank into a scoop-like chair. They pushed a button and restraints appeared, preventing him from leaving the chair. Well, where the hell is he? Yelled Hank, his emotions in high gear. He's dead. He must be dead. You killed him. You killed him. Why, you no-good bastard, all you killers.
Start the procedure,
ordered Grok as he turned to the medical personnel. The chair began to move upward with Hank Brady screaming hysterically at them. He was lowered into a glass tank, and the top of the tank descended upon him.
Thought patterns into the computer,
were the last words that Hank heard as the tank was sealed. The process had begun. A blaze of splitting green light, twinkling in the pattern Bill Brady knew so well, filled the tank. Seconds later, jolts of purple lightning scattered about him, and he screamed as his mind went blank. Brady's consciousness left the tank for the void. Minutes later, he opened his eyes slowly. The cab driver was just beginning to make his turn into the traffic. Brady looked up at the church window and out at the people walking the sidewalk through Chinatown. He looked into the crowd for the troubling answer to his blackouts, and more importantly, for their meaning. Why were Grok and Paris so concerned about the date, August 31st, 1992? That date could signify 1,000 different things. But it was clear, he thought, as he looked back inside the cab and down at the capsule, that the Mergendorf wanted that date held in the uttermost secrecy. capsule held the answer. He picked it up with both hands, feeling the smooth glass as the taxicab moved along in traffic. It was almost as if he were afraid to open the capsule because the contents could negate everything he believed about his blackouts. If that were in fact the case, he would doubt his own mental ability. Everything would become undone. Brady put his hand on the brass lid, gripping not only the handle of the capsule, but the handle to his own sanity. Brady yanked and pulled the handle backward, cracking the waxen seal and producing a sudden rush of air into the container. He reached inside and lifted out several newspaper clippings long before his time. They were mostly headlines about McKinley's assassination, the Spanish-American War in 1898, and others dating all the way back to the Civil War and Lincoln's death. These were rare clippings, in perfect condition. He wanted more, and reached back into the capsule, pulling out a number of folded sheets of white paper. Beneath the paper, and giving the capsule its weight, were a respectable number of gold coins. Brady, surprisingly, was not interested in the coins. He unfolded the 5 sheets of white paper, filled with the scraggly ink handwriting dated November 3rd, 1904. His face inflated as if he were a sunken wreck stranded on the ocean bottom, now to be raised to the sunlit surface. He read faster and faster, turning over the first page, the second, the third, the fourth, and then he scanned the last page. It was handwritten by Hank Brady. To whom it may concern, the Mergendorf, one of the 6 entrances to the Mergendorf, is located at Peace Mountain, near the Utah border. He set down the sheets of paper and looked out the cab as it traveled over to the Bay Bridge. Every few blocks he had seen police cars lined up toward the road and checking the oncoming vehicles. He wanted to go to the hospital to find out Lorna's condition. He was afraid he'd be arrested by the police. He slinked down in the back seat and rested his head in his hands. "Hey, you all right, pal?" "Yeah, I'm all right. I'm okay." Across the sparkling waters, he began thinking of the senseless act back at the gas station. His eyes filled as he glanced down at the newspaper clippings, themselves all acts of violence. Violence begets violence, he thought, as he leaned toward the driver. "Pull over to the next phone booth." "As soon as we hit Oakland, pal. We're already at $2, the driver told him, probably unsure that Brady would pay the total fare. "I think I have enough to cover this," said Brady, pulling a coin out from the capsule. "It'll cover all your expenses." "Gold? Where the hell did you get a coin like that?" asked the driver as he bit into it. "Gold, all right. And there's more. Just bring me where I want to go." "Yes, sir." The driver pulled into a restaurant parking lot in Oakland and drove up to a telephone booth next to the building. Brady had already placed all the papers into the capsule, and he carried it into the telephone booth. He set it down and dialed the operator, all under the watchful eye of the driver, trying to figure out this frenzied man with the glass capsule and the gold coins. The line was connected and it rang. Coffey's wife picked up the telephone in Virginia.
Hello, Coffee residence.
"Peggy, this is Bill Brady."
Oh, Bill, my God. Bob was worried sick.
"Why? What did he tell you?"
Well, he wasn't specific, but I know you're in some kind of trouble.
"Peggy, I need to talk to Bob."
He isn't here, Bill.
"Peggy, listen carefully. You tell Bob this is very important. I'm on my way to Nevada."
Nevada?
"Yes, Nevada, to a place near the Utah border called Peace Mountain."
Does this concern Von Grunkle?
"No, this will make everything about Von Grunkle seem mild. It involves," he said as he thought about the advisability of informing her of his blackouts. "Well, it's just important."
You are all right, aren't you, Bill?
"Peggy, I never felt better in my life. You tell Bob what I said. Goodbye." He picked up the yellow pages and flipped through, looking for the number of Seton General Hospital. He dropped a coin in and dialed quickly.
Seton General Hospital,
answered the telephone switchboard operator. "Yes, I would like to be advised on the condition of a 12-year-old girl. She was brought in for a gunshot wound," he said, the fateful words choking in his throat.
One moment, please.
Brady waited, first looking out at the highway, to the driver, and then down at the cigarette butts of the booth. His heart pounded as he prayed that Lorna had not died.
Who is calling, please?
Brady twisted his face around as if he were becoming another character. He spoke with great authority to the operator. "Who is this? This is Captain Brady. I helped pick the girl up off the street. What do you mean by questioning?"
Oh, I'm sorry, Captain. I'm sorry. She's in surgery. Appears there's internal damage.
"And will she live?" he asked as his eyes filled with tears.
Yes, they said she will live, answered the woman.
"Oh, good. My God. I'll call back. What's your name?"
My name is Miss Ryan.
"Thank you, Miss Ryan. Thank you. Thank you very much," he said as he hung up again. He bent over, lifted up the capsule from under his arm, opening the door with his other hand. A man who had been waiting to use the telephone walked inside as Brady headed for the taxi. He stuck his head inside the window and the driver looked over. "Is there a bus terminal around here?" "Yeah, a few miles in town." "Good. Get me there right now," said Brady as he got back inside the cab. The driver spun the tires and brought the cab toward the center of Oakland. A Nobel Experiment, Chapter 10. Bob Coffey sat inside the shuttle airplane as it landed in Appleton, Oregon. Coffey had been apprehensive all during the trip across the country. He was now second-guessing his decision about Stingler, feeling he may have been impetuous. After all, he was relying on information obtained by Brady, whom he deemed unstable now, and his superiors in the Air Force, namely General Hunt, would want answers. In many ways, Coffey hoped Stingler would not show up at the small airport. Maybe his reservation had been a mistake, and the sergeant had a logical explanation. Coffey had to act in any event, and he rented a Dodge Valiant, driving it up a grassy hill overlooking the fabricated terminal and landing strip. He was prepared to wait 2 hours. If Stingler did not show up at the Appleton airport, he would drive the distance to Junebug and get a motel room. He lit his pipe and began to read the local paper, checking the runways from time to time. An hour passed. He had read the entire newspaper, and it was crumpled in the back seat. He raised his binoculars, looking north, swinging them past a lightweight propeller-driven aircraft. Tightening his grip, he focused on the plane as it neared the airport. This would be it, he thought, as the tiny plane descended from the blue sky, scraping its wheels on the asphalt as it came in for the landing. The plane taxied around the runway and stopped next to the terminal. Coffey focused the binoculars on the hatch, waiting for the passengers to unload. The hatch was lowered and several people came down the ramp. The colonel squinted in the sunlight as his aide, Sergeant Lawrence Stingler, in civilian clothes, skidded down the incline. He was met by 2 robust men in dark blue suits. Stingler shook hands with them, exchanged tidbits, and then walked inside the terminal. Coffey did not recognize the 2 men, but he did recognize the unusual situation. While he did not have proof of Stingler's involvement with Von Grunkle, he was positive that all of this warranted calling General Hunt. Coffey would be putting his credibility online, and he would be doing what Bill Brady had spent a lifetime doing, taking a chance. He pulled the Valiant across the street to the airport restaurant. The word phone was designated in white letters across the top of the window. Rushing in from the car, he went inside into the telephone booth in the corner next to the front windows. He then placed a call to General Hunt in the Pennsylvania mountains.
What?
Demanded Hunt. "I have proof that he's in cahoots with Von Grunkle. It all centers around Junebug, Oregon," said Coffey as he watched the roadway leading from the terminal.
I'm standing here cooking fish and you're telling me that Von Grunkle has somehow fooled us all? And you're telling me that Larry Stingler is working side by side with him? Bob, where the hell did you get this information?
"From a reporter," he said, not wanting to mention Brady's name, but the general knew better.
Brady,
Snapped Hunt.
you've contacted Brady.
"Look, General, all right, it was Brady," confessed Coffey.
Whoa, I'd like to see that information before we go following Larry around.
"And just what is he doing up here, General? And who in God's name are those 2 men with him?"
Bob, I can't answer that.
"Wait," said Coffey as he raised the binoculars. "They're getting into a car right now, General."
Look, Bob,
"General, please send people up here to Junebug. Let's cover the area and get to the bottom of what's going on up here."
Bob, Bob, I just can't send people out there without any proof, especially on the word of Bill Brady.
I'll take the heat, Cal. Totally. If I'm wrong, I'll resign my commission and take all the responsibility.
Well, you must be pretty damn sure, Bob. But it's not all that easy. This will have to be discussed.
General, they're leaving the airport now. Here comes the car. It's a 62 Buick Green, Colorado plate HX8583.
HX8583. Bob, I would advise you,
said the general as Coffee hung up. Coffee ran through the restaurant and out the front door to the Valiant. He leaped into the driver's seat and started the engine. The Buick was close to a half a mile away as it turned onto the main road, heading south into the country. Coffee accelerated the smaller car, and as he reached the junction, he was not surprised to see the green and white road sign which read, Junebug, 22 miles. The colonel roared over the relatively flat landscape. He could not, in his own pursuit, help thinking that he was falling into the same trap as Brady. Von Grunkle, however, had always stayed one step ahead of Brady, he thought, baiting him with false accounts, which Brady had subsequently published. Maybe this whole thing was pure intuition on Brady's part. It was as if he had some instinctive misapprehension about Von Grunkle, a deep-seated suspicion of the man's inner being. Brady could never properly transfer it into words, but it was that strong feeling which gave him the go-ahead, his raison d'etre, to find the answers when he never knew the questions. Coffee did not have such a sense. Understandably, he had been cynical about Von Grunkle before the landing at Tobin Falls. His attitude, however, was shaped by the lack of credibility of the doctor's theories and stories. Like everyone else, deep in his consciousness, he had been ripe for one massive deception, ready to be duped into a false sense of togetherness with beings from another world. It was the instinctive human desire to reach out and to know more than is already known. The longing was still all there, he reasoned, as he drove through the Oregon countryside after the Buick. Von Grunkle had known this vulnerability, and he knew it could be bought for a price, and the result for him was more money and power. The countryside was changing now, growing hilly with the tall fir trees. The road twisted and turned. Before he was aware of it, the Buick was not in sight. He backed up the Valiant wildly, fearing that Stingler and the others had turned off the highway and all would be lost. Hunt had already sounded skeptical about the whole story. What if he could not find Stingler, the car, and the two men in the dark suits? As he backed up the rental car, a yellow and brown sign was coming into view in the rearview mirror. It was the Junebug State Park. Backing into the entrance, he shoved the car into first gear and sped into the park. It did not take long as he traveled down the narrow road till he saw a dust cloud moving along the dirt road ahead. The Buick was moving north along a clear blue reservoir under a mountain slope. When it went around the mountain, Coffee pushed the accelerator to the floor and crossed the reservoir dam road. Suspicious, he said out loud. Very suspicious. The Valiant, breaking the 10-mile-an-hour speed limit, flew down the sloped road at 50 miles an hour. He rose upward, reaching the top, and to the north the whole Appleton Valley was coming into view. As he rushed toward the fork in the road at the top of the hill, he skidded to a stop and got out of the car. Standing on the driver's side, he placed the binoculars to his eyes and looked north. The Buick was following a winding dirt road through apple orchards surrounded by a fair-sized river. It spun from the dirt road suddenly and rolled across the apple orchards. Coffee followed its progress closely as it traveled for nearly a half a mile. A wide slit in the grass, just barely discernible without the field glasses, appeared ahead, and astoundingly the car vanished into the ground. The slit was sealed and only the grass remained. Despite this remarkable turn of events, Coffee stayed cool and in control of his actions. Again, he lifted the binoculars northward toward Appleton, scrutinizing as he smiled. In the distance, he could see a contingent of helicopters heading south toward Junebug. Hunt had trusted his judgment, and quickly. It would only be a matter of time before they were overhead, and he could signal them. He breathed a sigh of relief, letting the binoculars dangle around his neck as he gazed across the valley. "Hands in the air!" ordered a voice from behind. "Don't move or you're a dead man." Coffee raised his hands into the air in compliance, even though he was not armed. 3 men in casual street clothes surrounded the Valiant on both sides. They carried high-powered rifles and not-so-subtle expressions of hostility. "Turn!" yelled the same voice. Coffee looked at them with a slight grin. "Gentlemen?" The man who had spoken began to search him. When the guy found no weapons, he ripped the binoculars from the colonel's neck. "In your car!" he shouted abrasively. "Driver's seat!" "Very well," said Coffee as he followed their instructions, and he couldn't help but think just how right Bill Brady had been. Two of the men piled in the back seat as the leader jumped in front. He looked over at Coffee and let the gun point directly at him. "All right, Colonel, drive. You saw where that car went? I know you did. Now go." Coffee put the car in reverse and backed around very casually, as if he were out for a Sunday drive with his wife. He shifted into drive and drove down the road. The leader of the three men became agitated. "Come on, step on it," he yelled, the words spitting from his mouth. Coffee increased his speed, moving through the forested slopes and into the orchards below. He had no doubt about the impropriety involved. It was the nature of the effort that plagued him. And he knew as the helicopters advanced, he would be underground well before their arrival over the park. "Where do I go?" he asked the man in the front seat. "Over there, between the trees," he pointed, "just like the other car." They passed off the dirt road and onto the grass, the Valiant bumping up and down. Ahead, Coffee could see the slit in the ground begin to open. He slowed the car and brought it inside, down a cement ramp which sloped deep into the earth. The ramp wound around to the right, and Coffee shifted into a lower gear. The road finally straightened and leveled off in an open room about 100 feet below the surface. Immediately in front of them was an awesome black cylinder, riveted in sections like a water tank. Coffee stopped the car as several more men ran from a glass room surrounding the inner room and the center tank. "Get out, Colonel," instructed the man in the front seat, and they all stepped out. The guns were trained on Coffee as he stood by the car. He looked up at the hundreds of fluorescent lights on the steel frame ceiling. As he peered toward the glass room with its blinking lights, he saw, with no real surprise, Dr. Olin Von Grunkle standing in the doorway. "Damn you! Damn you!" said Von Grunkle as he stomped from the room. "You have alerted the authorities, you fool!" he shouted, but Coffee was silent. "Don't you have anything to say, Colonel?" "Pleasure to see you, Doctor," smiled Coffee, tipping his cap and infuriating Von Grunkle. "It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I will have my chance again. We will get away from here." Coffee very calmly took out his pipe and lit the tobacco. As he puffed away, he studied the troubled Von Grunkle. "Seems as though you've been busy, Doctor." "How did you find this place? Was it Brady? Did he lead you here? Is Brady still alive?" "Bill Brady is a fugitive from justice, Doctor. I haven't seen him since Ventura." "I know that is not true. I know this," shouted the doctor. "But that is not important now. I will find out what I want to know later," he said, turning abruptly and walking toward the glass room. "Follow me, Colonel." "Oh, Doctor," said one of the men as he came down from the car with Coffee's briefcase in the manila envelope. "I found this in the car, Doctor." Von Grunkle took the folder and saw the postmark. He ripped the folder and pulled out the photocopies. Biting his tongue, he skimmed the bills of lading. Then he looked up at Coffee. "I have no time for this now. I will find the truth, Colonel, and you will not find it very pleasurable, believe me." Von Grunkle marched into the room, followed by the pipe-smoking Coffee. There were dozens of color television monitors above the blinking lights. Their screens revealed a number of locations, the interior of a spaceship, and the exact spaceship described by the people who had been let off by the Urantians in Tobin Falls. He could see additional bronze beings walking around the ship with the stars in the background. He turned to the far monitors on his right and nodded his head. A new group of drugged abductees lay sleeping in their respective rooms. "Oh, this is very clever, Doctor," said Coffee with respect. "They will remain asleep for an appropriate time," said Von Grunkle as one of his men pointed to another set of monitors outside. "Doctor, there's helicopters." "They will see nothing. Don't worry about it," said Von Grunkle as he shook his head. "I have taken precautions against people like you, Colonel, and Mr. Brady. It's just a matter of time. They will pass and we will leave. Leave? Asked Coffee, still looking at the monitors. Yes, leave, Colonel. You haven't even asked about my simulator, said the egotistical Von Grunkle. But Coffee deliberately kept his eyes on the helicopters. Inside the walls of that tank is a vacuum. It surrounds the inner simulator. Coffee was not impressed, but he did not let Von Grunkle become aware of that fact. 20 choppers, almost overhead, Doctor. Interesting. And inside that vacuum, said Von Grunkle, raising his voice, is a simulated star scan as it would look to one traveling in space. Do you know why, Colonel? Coffee turned from the television monitors, his pipe in his mouth as he stared at Von Grunkle. Doctor, I will tell you why. Because we are simulating the actual flight. Those people are conditioned to think they are aboard an alien craft. Abducted them in blinding light, drugging them until we were ready for them. They are still drugged when we want them to be. They are regimented, taught by the aliens. And do you know why we have done this? He asked as Stingler emerged from the door of the glass room. Well, hello, Larry, said Coffee. Hello, Bob, said the self-assured Stingler. Congratulations are in order, Larry, he told Stingler. What do you mean? Asked the perplexed sergeant. I mean, said Coffee, how you adeptly hoodwinked us all in Washington. How you've worked so closely with Von Grunkle, worthy of the good doctor himself. I will take that as a compliment, Colonel. Impressive, said Coffee as he smiled. Impressive that you pulled this whole thing off. I am impressed. But you wouldn't do this for nothing, would you, Larry? I have already got $6 million, and I will have another 15, which will be delayed now because of your curiosity, said Von Grunkle as he adjusted his thick glasses and looked at the radar screen on the wall. 2 miles downrange for those choppers, Doctor, said one of the workers. That's good. We will board the simulator now. Everyone will go below, and we will have the vacuum secured, said Von Grunkle. There was a mass exit along the glass wall to a hatch about halfway around the wall. Going on a little trip, are we? Asked Coffee as he shuffled along ahead of Von Grunkle. Yes, we are, stated Von Grunkle as he followed Coffee to the hatch. Coffee stepped through the hatch and onto a staircase of reinforced concrete that wound under the glass room. It led to another hatch, which was directly under the imposing black tank. Coffee estimated its diameter to be close to 200 feet. You have set the project back only a short time, Colonel. No one will prove anything about Junebug. Now, Colonel, let us get to the heart of the matter. I am not giving you this demonstration for my enhancement of my age. I want you to work for me just like Larry has worked for me. No. That was quick. But I assure you, you will be financially rewarded. Say, $500,000? Is that how much it took to buy Stingler? Asked Coffee. 700,000. Forget it, Von Grunkle. I'm not for sale. All right, then. Do you value your own life? I will personally push you from this ship near the bay. Good. Then I won't have to look at your sickening cuss a minute longer. Well, I will give you some time, said Von Grunkle as he undid his seatbelt and rose. Oh, Doctor, just one final thing. Yes, what is it, Colonel? Do you really believe that aliens have come to Earth and have made contact with us? Yes, of course. That is my driving force, he replied sharply. But have you ever had one shred of reliable evidence? Well, of course I have. Aha! You and I both know we're alone out here. Have you or have you not had any evidence of alien landings? Von Grunkle puckered his lips and was genuinely flustered. He refused to look directly at Coffee and walked quickly to the center of the ship. By not answering the colonel's question, he had indeed answered all his questions. Coffee shook his head. Why had he not listened to Brady when he had the chance to act? He snapped off his harness and went to the glass wall. The countryside, thousands of feet below, was slowly moving under the ship. He thought about all aspects of Von Grunkle's operation, and one thing looked certain. The doctor had planned everything well, and it now appeared as though he would make it out of the country. "Keep an eye on Coffee," said Von Grunkle to the two guards below. The two nodded their heads as they slowly meandered out of the outside corridor. "Doctor, the radar," said one of the men to his left. "Radar?" scoffed Von Grunkle, and he ran over to the screen. "Yes, Doctor, coming from a base outside Appleton." "Aircraft?" asked Von Grunkle arrogantly. "Aircraft?" he asked now bewilderedly, and he began to think. "Increase speed now," he ordered the man below.
"But Doctor,"
said the voice from the intercom,
"we are already traveling at a speed of 80 miles an hour faster than they are."
"There will be others. Increase speed now to maximum." "Maximum?" asked the man below. "Now. They will not catch us. They will not even come close." Coffee, still standing in front of the window, was thrown forward onto the floor as the ship thrust forward. The increased acceleration had put the entire ship into confusion, with everyone wondering what was happening. Coffee lifted himself up by a closet door on the opposite wall. "Get away from the closet, Colonel," ordered one of the guards below as he too rose to his feet. "Very well," said Coffee as he walked precariously toward the window. It was as if the whole ship were becoming unmaneuverable. The land below was getting darker, and the sun shone on the rapidly moving object in the sky. The jets had fallen far back, behind the simulator, and they seemed to be roaring toward Vancouver, British Columbia. But the speed was unsustainable, and the ship began to sputter like a car's misfiring spark plug. It lurched from side to side, hurling Coffee around the rim, and turned violently to the right as it began to lose speed. "What the?" Coffee started to say as the two guards stumbled into the confusion of the central part of the ship.
"The engines have overheated. I knew it. Damn it, I knew it,"
cried the voice on the intercom. "Hold your positions," yelled Von Grunkle as the people aboard were becoming worried. "We will be under control. No, we must press ahead." Von Grunkle monitored a new group of jets that was coming into view in the twilight skies over Portland, Oregon. The pilots seemed geared for action and were getting specific orders from the ground.
"Do not fire, do not fire. Repeat, do not fire." "Roger, Portland. Object is in sight now. Speed fluctuating from 1,100 miles an hour, now at 900. Course unchanged." "Confirmed. Speed is decelerating,"
said the pilot.
987. "Below sound, sir. The object is definitely beginning to drop." "Roger, ZW leader. We have the object at 4,000 and falling."
In the utter disruption aboard ship, Coffee had raced toward the mysterious closet. Inside were several dozen parachutes stored neatly on the shelves, as their use was never anticipated. He strapped on the chute as fast as he could, ran to the elevator shaft, and leaped to the bottom. Racing wildly past the controllers, he opened the outside hatch. Before they knew what had happened, Coffee had jumped from the ship. He was free-falling slightly west of the ship. Without delay, he pulled the cord, and the pack erupted into a spreading orange and white chute in the twilight. The ship, hundreds of feet away from him now, was plummeting toward the outer regions of the city. He could hear the craft whizzing through the air as it neared a hilly ridge, careening into the earth and exploding like a city gas tank. The tiny mushroom cloud rose upward, and black smoke inundated the area. As he looked toward the crash, however, he noticed a single parachute descending some distance away. Someone else had survived the crash. Coffee gripped on the straps tightly as he floated downward. He was over a heavily populated residential neighborhood with thousands of homes lining the gridded streets. Steering as best he could, he moved past the telephone lines, trees, and into a backyard of a small ranch house. Although he tumbled over several times, he managed to extricate himself from the rumpled fabric. His first thought, as the people ran from the surrounding houses, was to call General Hunt. From that point on, he would let his supervisors handle everything. Or so he thought. A Nobel Experiment, Chapter 11. Coffee spent the night in isolation from the outside world in a National Guard armory. A team of over 30 men, including General Hunt, conferred with him long into the night. All the credit was being given to Coffey, and he was informed that a promotion would be forthcoming. Despite that praise, Coffey refused to take any credit whatsoever for cracking Von Grunkle's hoax. Instead, he related the information Brady had given him, step by step, and the officials were able to piece together the story. Coffey's isolation would soon be broken when he was forced into a news conference the next day. He wanted no part of the attention that was being showered upon him, and he entered the National Guard auditorium very reluctantly. But his orders were clear. He was to mention nothing about the payoffs to Von Grunkle in order to protect national security. General Hunt, Coffey, and a number of military advisors walked across the room toward a long table. The flash bulbs popped and the television lights were bright. The announcer described the arrival as the nation watched.
Colonel Robert G. Coffey making his way with General Calvin Hunt, the Air Force, to the table that has been set up here in the Armory outside Portland, Oregon. Yesterday, of course, a dramatic day here in Portland and for the country, with the crash of an aircraft outside the city. Air Force officials, as we have mentioned previously, told CBS News that the aircraft was constructed by Dr. Olin Von Grunkle. It is believed that Von Grunkle was aboard the ship, but his body has not been identified. Colonel Coffey, the man you see in the orange jumpsuit, parachuted to Earth just seconds before the crash of the ship. General Hunt is now preparing to speak. Here is General Calvin Hunt.
Hunt cleared his throat several times as his name, General Calvin B. Hunt, USAF, flashed on the television screen.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to open this conference by telling the world of a major fraud which has pervaded world thinking for the past few months. It has been uncovered by the man sitting next to me. Colonel Coffey penetrated a secret simulator site in the hills around Junebug, Oregon late yesterday afternoon. He alerted my office to the possibility of such a complex previous to his entry into the simulator site. A fleet of helicopters was dispatched to the area but learned nothing of that. Where exactly?
Asked one of the reporters.
I'm afraid that complex has been very cleverly liquidated, and virtually no trace remains. But let me say this about the simulator, flying saucer if you like, left the Junebug area late yesterday afternoon. That simulator was the same craft which was used in the landing at Tobin Falls, California last June. Men had been hired and effectively posed as alien creatures. These men, the complex, and the craft are under the auspices of Dr. Von Grunkle.
The crowd, holding a high respect for Von Grunkle, became a bedlam of excitement. They couldn't believe that everyone had been duped.
Please,
said Hunt into the microphone.
Let's please be quiet so Colonel Coffey can speak. Go ahead, Colonel.
He told Coffey and slid the microphone over to him. Coffey spent the next hour answering their questions, adeptly sidestepping the tough ones. In the end, he was responding to even the most mundane quizzing, and General Hunt decided to call the proceedings to a halt. Coffey stood and made one last statement before the television lights went down. He tried to summarize all that he had felt and learned from the experience.
I just want to say that I was among those who believed that aliens landed in Tobin Falls. In all my years in the Air Force, I personally have never seen any evidence that would indicate an unequivocal alien presence on Earth. But this Tobin Falls thing made sense. It, for me, fulfilled everything I had been looking for in my career. I only hope that in the future that I, and the rest of you, will not be so gullible, always aware of the deception at Tobin Falls. For in my own mind, with all that I have now learned, I can say categorically there are no aliens. There are no aliens.
Coffey's last words were to make headlines around the globe. The publicity frightened him, and he scorned it. He left the platform and quickly walked down the congested hallway as the media pursued him. A young private made his way through the entourage and called for Coffey. He glanced back, catching the private in his peripheral vision, and stopped immediately. Colonel, this way, a call from your wife. Coffey pushed his way backward through the blood-hounding reporters and back toward the private. The young soldier cleared the way, bringing Coffey into a side office. "My God," said the private as he jammed the door shut. "Price of fame, Private." "Yes, sir," answered the private. "She's on line 2, sir." Coffey walked over to the desk. He wiped the sweat from his brow and picked up the telephone. "Peggy?"
Oh, Bob, I just watched the news conference. You were
Oh, I'm sorry. They wouldn't let me call you before, and I'm glad it's over.
You look tired on TV, Bob.
I am tired. Couldn't take much more of it. All I want to do now is get on the next jet back to Washington.
You can't do that, Bob.
Why not?
Bill Brady called me yesterday.
Bill? Where? Is he all right? Asked the excited Coffee.
Bob, I don't know. He just left a message for you.
What kind of message, Peggy? Coffee wanted to know.
He said he was on his way to a place called Peace Mountain in Nevada or Utah. He said it was very important.
My God, poor Bill. I feel so sorry for Bill. Damn, he was right all along. Maybe he's going off the deep end, Peg. Did he sound bizarre?
Enthusiastic, not bizarre. He emphasized it was very important.
Well, where the devil is Peace Mountain? Asked Coffee as he rubbed his tired eyes.
I looked it up on the map, Bob. It's near Utah and Salt Lake City.
Wait a minute. Bill's in a very unstable state, and he'll be sought by the authorities. If I send them out there, Bill might do something rash. No, I have to ask Hunt if I can go out there myself.
That might be the best idea, Bob, but please be careful.
I will. You see, Peggy, at this point, I think I'm the only one that Bill trusts. You're right, Bob. You're absolutely right. Coffee made the arrangements with Hunt, and it was agreed, in conjunction with an FBI directive, that he be flown to a base near Salt Lake City. Upon arrival in an Air Force jet, he was surrounded by FBI agents who advised him how to proceed. Although he did not want to take weapons, he was persuaded to bring both a high-powered rifle and a pistol. A helicopter equipped with a shortwave radio was brought into the hangar. Coffee, still in the orange jumpsuit, stood by the chopper and was ready to go. Now, Colonel, said the agent named Davenport, play upon his feelings. Chicago told us this guy is really driven to do what he does. If you're going to reason with him, you'll have to remember what I told you. Understood, Davenport, said Coffee as he got inside the red and white helicopter. Agree to what he's doing. Use my relationship with him to get him back. And use force if necessary. Mr. Davenport, I've known Bill Brady for a long time, and I really don't think those weapons are appropriate. Bring them, Colonel. You don't know what will happen out there. Coffee nodded, and the blades of the chopper began to revolve swiftly. He put on a pair of sunglasses and strapped himself in. And then the chopper lifted from the cement pad. As he rose above the airbase, he could see the flat extending to the horizon. He had about 3 hours of daylight remaining. He was 40 minutes into his flight before he was able to see the mountain ranges coming into view. A short time later, the rising protrusion called Peace Mountain was beginning to take shape as dual peaks in the sunlight.
G83192 to base. G83192 to Salt Lake base. I have a visual sighting of the mountain now. Estimated time of arrival is 10 minutes. You have 2 hours and 20 minutes of sighting time left. Understood,
said Coffee as the chopper flew over the remote flats toward the mountain. When he reached the mountain, he circled around several times looking for Brady in the afternoon sunlight along the rocky slopes. The area, however, looked totally deserted, with mountains extending for close to 90 miles into the wilderness, finally emerging on a highway 112 miles from the mountain. A single dirt road was cut through the area by wilderness management some years back, but no sign of Bill Brady. Coffee looked down at the lake in the midst of the open area near the base of the mountain and brought the copter around once again. His only choice, he perceived, was to travel over the dirt road itself. He had just gone a few hundred yards when he saw a singular figure scrambling for cover by the rocks below. The road was too narrow to bring down the chopper, and he had to return to the lakeshore, setting it down in the sand. Leaving the weapons behind and deliberately not radioing the FBI, fearing they would come out to the mountain, Coffee set out on foot down the road to the west. He spotted Bill Brady a few minutes later. This time the reporter did not run as he recognized the colonel's figure in the distance.
Brady!
Brady, still in his blue suit, ran up to Coffee, waving his arms and smiling broadly. He believed Coffee would help him. Bob! Bob! He said, hugging his friend. I'm so glad to see you, Bob. Were you in that chopper? Yes, it's back at the lake, said Coffee, studying Brady's eyes. Did you hear about Von Grunkle, Bill? No, I didn't, said Brady as he started toward the lake. I went to Junebug. Stingler was working for Von Grunkle. I found a simulated spaceship and I don't care about Von Grunkle anymore, stated Brady. Coffee raised his brow, perplexed at Brady's new attitude. He stopped and looked at his friend. You what? I have more important things on my mind, said Brady as he walked ahead. Come on, Bob, I have to get to the mountain while there's still some daylight left. You chase after this guy for years and years. Something finally breaks and you don't care? I don't know the answer right now, said Brady as if he possessed some keen insight. Answer to what? Asked the perturbed Coffee. After all, he had just risked his own life for something Brady had believed in, and now Brady didn't want to discuss it. The aliens, said Brady confidently. If you would just listen to me, Bill, they were all actors, just like you thought. The ship was a phony rocket-powered craft, which crashed in Portland yesterday. Von Grunkle is missing and there are no aliens. That's just it, Bob, said Brady as the lake and the mountain came into view. My God, that's really it. Only from the other side. It is the mountain. There it is. That's really it. Only from the other side. But that is it. That is the mountain. The mountain appeared as a jutting series of jagged edges against the blue sky. In the foreground, the lake was deep in color, with not a ripple on it, and shaded by the overhead rocks. Bill, please explain yourself, because I don't know what's going on here. I will, Bob. You are the only one here, correct? Yes, I am. As I thought. I trust you, Bob. I'm talking about real aliens, Colonel. Creatures not of this world. Real aliens? Since when do you believe in real aliens? They're inside that mountain, Bob, and I'm going to make contact with them. They're called the Mergendorf. Oh, yeah, the Mergendorf. Sure. Sure, Bill. Come over by the chopper and I'll show you Alice and the White Rabbit. This is no joke, Bob, he said sternly. I know there are aliens in that mountain. Yeah? And how do you know that, Bill? Asked Coffee as they reached the red and white helicopter. I'll tell you. He began to pull out pouches from all his suit coat pockets. There's approximately $65,000 in gold here. Oh, Lord, what have you done now? It's mine, Bob, legally, all mine. It was in a time capsule in San Francisco. You can check with attorney Alfred Johnson on South Pasadena Boulevard. Bill, why don't you just get in the chopper and we'll go back? You listen to me, Bob, he said angrily. There's a little girl named Lorna in Seton General Hospital in San Francisco. All of this money is to go to her. Is that clear? Is that the girl who called me from Boise? Yes. But, Bill, I have to check this out. I can't just go over there and hand over this to some kid. Then check it out. Check it out. Look, Bill, if you get in the chopper, you can give it to her personally, insisted Coffee as he opened the door and straddled the opening. No. I'm going up that mountain, Bob, he said, turning and walking toward a trail along the lake. Coffee reached the inside and pulled out the rifle. He braced it on his shoulder and pointed it squarely at his friend. Hold it right there, Bill. Brady half turned and caught sight of the rifle. He spun around, stunned that his friend would use force. Forget it, Coffee, forget it, he scorned. Okay, Bill, get in the chopper now. Brady seemed a little pensive and then shook his head. No, Bob, you're not going to use that rifle. I'm leaving to go up the mountain. You can believe me or not. Just make sure that Lorna gets that money. She means a lot to me, Bob. Make sure she's all right. Bill, you're going with me, he said loudly. Goodbye, Bob, said Brady one last time as he walked away from the colonel. Coffee aimed the rifle at him as he headed onto the lakeside trail, but he didn't fire. Brady had called his bluff and was about to climb the mountain anyway. It would take several hours, he thought, but he was just going to have to be patient while Brady went through the motions. He sat next to the helicopter, put down the rifle, and grabbed his binoculars. In total silence of the wilderness, he waited.
GA3 192, this is Davenport. Do you read?
Sounded the agent over the shortwave several minutes later. Coffee looked up at the set. Reluctantly, he stood and picked up the microphone. This is Coffee, I read you.
Colonel, what's going on up there? We haven't heard from you for a half an hour.
I'm searching on foot.
We're almost ready.
No, absolutely not. Do not send a team out here. I will continue the search alone.
No sign of Brady?
No, I'm still looking. I can come back after dark, no problem. And I can return again here tomorrow, said Coffey as he looked up. Brady had just begun climbing the hazardous rock trail just above the forest line.
Check back in 10 minutes,
said the agent. I'll check back in 45, said Coffey. I'm not running back to the chopper every 10 minutes, he said as he shut off the set and raised his binoculars. Brady walked quickly along the narrow trail, pulling himself over the tighter spots, but always geared toward the indentation between the two peaks. The land below was dark, and the upper half of the range was the only area left in sunlight as he strode across the scattered rocks of the indentation. Coffey held the binoculars steady as Brady looked down at the far shore and the tiny red and white helicopter. Coffey would see Brady wave and then look directly into the sky around him. "I know you know I'm here!" shouted Brady into the cool wind. "Show yourselves!" he demanded as he looked eastward over the salt flats and pointed. "Right down there, 88 years ago, you chased a renegade ship. It crashed over there after it hit this very mountain. This mountain, I know about this mountain. It's station number 6. You call yourselves the Guardians of Earth, Neuralon. Listen to me. I know of Commander Grok, Paris, and the rest of you blue-haired creatures. Listen to me," he cried as he sank to his knees on the rocks. "I know you exist. I know of August 31st, 1992. Coffey munched on a sandwich that they had prepared for him. He lifted the field glasses one more time. When he saw Brady on his knees in the sunlight, he set the sandwich on the aluminum foil and sprang to his feet. To him, Brady was pleading with the thin air, and he was precariously close to the edge of the cliffs. Fearing for Brady's life, he leaped into the chopper, but he debated whether to start the blades. He put his finger on the switch and was about to push it. What he saw at the top of the mountain made him freeze. This reserved Air Force colonel barreled out of the helicopter as if he had just been electrocuted. He ran onto the lakeshore and planted himself in the sand as he looked through the field glasses to the extraordinary events above the mountain. Brady looked up into the sky. 300 feet above him, an M-shaped ship appeared almost instantaneously. The same M-shaped ship from his blackouts. The blue-green vessel glowed in the twilight. Perhaps Coffey was studying it from below. There were hundreds of tiny windows at the top, down to the bold, curving tails at each base. Brady stood as if he were facing his accuser and pleaded to know the truth. A triangular beam of green, twinkling light spewed forth from the bottom of the vessel, encompassing all the space between the peaks. And then the beam slowly retracted into the ship, bringing Bill Brady up along with it. Seconds later, the ominous vessel darted into the skies with no sound and no dispersal of air and no explanation. On the ground, Coffey swallowed several times, checking and rechecking the mountain with the binoculars. His eyes were wide open, not tearful, but in a state of stupor. He shook his head, telling himself that what he had just seen was not real. Yet he had seen it vividly. Taking the logical course, he headed back to the chopper, hoping Brady might still be on the mountain, perhaps behind some rock. He started the blade spinning and brought the chopper upward toward the base of the mountain. The light was dim up here, but adequate enough to see Brady if he could find him. Coffey prayed that Brady had not fallen over the edge. What the colonel found, however, as he reached the top, was that Brady simply was not there. Landing the chopper, he got out and scoured the rocky indentation. It was suddenly very dark, and Coffey, visibly upset, got back in the helicopter. He circled the area a number of times before he headed back east and into the darkness. What could he say to the men waiting back at the base? He was the man that only 24 hours before had just exposed the fraudulent alien spaceship. He was the man who, with no qualms, had just proclaimed to the world that there were no aliens. Would he go back to the world with a wild story of a colossal hulk perched in the air? zapping his disturbed friend into its interior and then vanishing into space? As he flew back, his mind was understandably confused. He kept the shortwave unplugged during the 40-minute trip. He emerged from total darkness and down to the well-lit pad at the base. He had no idea what he would tell Davenport. He stuffed the gold in pouches into the lunchbox and looked across the runway. In seconds, he was surrounded by a large contingent of police and agents. "Well, Colonel?" asked Davenport as Coffee stepped out, carrying the lunchbox under the spinning blades. Coffee looked blank as the words were still trapped in his throat. "Colonel, are you all right?" asked one of the policemen. No, I'm fine," he said as he began walking toward the terminal, still in a state of disbelief. "Bob, what's the matter?" asked Davenport. Coffee stopped, squinted, and pressed his teeth against his lips. "Gentlemen, I regret to inform you that the information was false. Bill Brady was never out at Peace Mountain." Nobel Experiment, Chapter 12. Being surrounded by the mysterious weightless feeling within the green light didn't frighten Bill Brady. In fact, he anticipated his destination with great ease. He was soon inside the reflective room, and as the wall was retracted, he had a broad grin on his face. The room existed just like it had in his blackouts. Likewise, the Mergendorfs in the outer room were no strangers to him. They were brandishing weapons, however, trained right on his human figure. The weapons looked like silver spiders, 5 distinct pipes or chambers curving from a round power source. Activation of the weapon occurred at the trigger buttons next to both thumbs of the hand. Brady stared at the serious intent of the dwarfs, and suddenly the experience was not so exhilarating. As they stood guard, the same commander, Grok, and his second-in-command, Paris, came running from the chute into the outer room. They looked over to Bill Brady, human being, standing in the other room with his hands on his hips. "Commander Grok," he said as if he already knew the commander, "I must say you keep your age very well." Brady wondered if Grok saw the resemblance between Brady and his ancestor Hank Brady. Grok looked mystified. He motioned for the dwarfs to lower their weapons and shouted out several words imperceptible to Brady. "Devesmi, Ichem, Blosnak. Devesni, Ichem, Brosak. Galipos, Galipos," answered one of the guards as he shook his larger-than-human head. "Blakasam Blasnak?" asked his second-in-command as another dwarf arrived in the room from the chute, carrying the translator. To the utter astonishment of the Mergendorfs, Brady walked right up to the inner room and took the device from the dwarf. He could see the confusion in Grok's large black eyes.
"Our computers tell us,"
said Grok, his voice heard clearly by Brady,
"that you made several direct references to our activities in this area. We know who you are, and we have followed your analysis of the human being Von Grunkle. Your name is Bill Brady."
"Then you must know I'm descended from Hank Brady. He was my great-grandfather."
"Yes, we know that. When your articles first appeared about that fraudulent Earthman, we were able to trace the connection."
"Well, I know of your 6 stations of Neuralon and how they are 500 miles below the surface of the planet. You are the guardians of Earth."
"Explain. Was this information passed down through your family?"
asked the commander. No, said Brady, looking at their pink skin and light blue hair. "In a way, you could say I imagined you."
"Vague statements,"
said Paris,
"are hardly helpful at this time."
"All right, then you tell me in a clear way what August 31st, 1992 in Arpeg means to you." Grok blinked his eyes quickly and pulled his second-in-command to the corner of the room, but Brady could hear through the device.
"Paris, this human knows the date,"
said Grok.
"In the other information, Commander, some type of transference has taken place in his brain. And due directly to what I did here 88 of their Earth years ago,"
said Grok.
"More than likely, the incident was totally my responsibility. We will take the human Brady to the..." "Are you saying we should keep this human aboard the vessel?"
demanded Paris. That is exactly what I'm saying, Paris. The laws of Bahrain expressly forbid the extradition of aliens, said Paris. A human being walking around with the date in his head? To sound ruthless, Commander, but the law is specific in cases of contact. Kill him? Asked Grok as Brady began to back into the first room. What does the date mean? Asked Brady over his feelings of self-preservation. See, said Paris. He's already begun to ask questions, Commander. No, we won't kill him, nor will we send him back, said Grok as they walked toward the reflective room. Are you planning to take over Earth on that date? Brady asked them. We will answer no questions at this time, Brady, said Grok as he turned toward his guards and stepped back. Pluton's ready. Disable. The dwarfs raised their multi-chambered weapons toward Brady, and he cowered to the back of the room. 5 streams of bright light from each fluton moved rather slowly across the room, reaching their target in less than a second. There was no escape for Brady as the energy hit him all over, paralyzing his nervous system painlessly. With a slight smile on his face, he fell to the floor. Bring him to the conversion area. Prepare a team for morphological transformation. Brady was kept unconscious during all the phases of the transformation. In a series of steps taking weeks, the medical personnel aboard the vessel altered Brady's body. In its place, he had the outward appearance of a Mergendorf. He counted 3 Earth weeks, according to the Mergendorf, from his encounter at Peace Mountain. Bill Brady slowly opened his large, round, black eyes. A female dwarf was sitting on the edge of the bed, and she arose as he sat up. "What the hell's going on here?" asked Brady as he looked around the room. "Your human body has been altered into a Mergendorf body, the exterior only." "What?" he shouted, and he looked at the dual thumbs on each hand. He reached upward and felt the fine blue hair on his head, and he ran his hand across the connecting brows. "How did you do this? This isn't possible. And how am I able to hear you?" "One question at a time, Brady. The hearing has been accomplished by the placement of a processor in your spinal cord, coordinated with your brain to provide, shall we say, supplements your speech ability. We can hear you and you can hear us." "Unbelievable." "This was accomplished in 10 separate operations. We are quite proud of the detail. You have the best features of the race. A villager from the northern Middle Hills," she said, handing him a mirror. "Good looking?" He smiled, looking at his mouth. The white teeth plate was firmly in place. "I must leave now and notify the commander you are awake," said the female as she walked to the round doorway, and it opened like an iris. A young dwarf of command rank was standing outside, and he exchanged imperceptible words with the E-dwarf. The dwarf walked inside, and the door closed. "My name is Antovian. I am the director of this vessel." "The what?" "I determine the vessel's course." "You mean navigator?" "If you will. And as I said, my name is Antovian," he said as he put his hand on Brady's shoulder. "This is the greeting of my people. It is like your handshake. I take it I'm not going back to Earth." "I think you can answer that question for yourself, Brady. The operation has been done in order to transition you into our world." "Swell," said Brady as he looked around the room. "The rest of my life with you people. Look, not that a few months, even years, might not be interesting, but how can I possibly live among you in this law? What is this law of Bahrain?" "Cannot answer that question right now. You will probably be taught," he said with a touch of sadness in his eyes. "I can feel for you, Brady. Having to leave your own people, their ways and customs for a new life. I can only tell you that you must make the best of what happens to you. Take advantage of the opportunities that come your way." "What do you mean?" "Haven't they told you about the date?" No, I just woke up. You mean August 31st, 1992. Then I don't know anything about it." "I'm sorry. I thought the commander might have spoken to you," he said as Grok appeared in the doorway. The director stood as his commander came over to the bed. "That will be all, Dwarf Antovian." "Yes, Commander," he said as he turned to Brady. "I will be back to see you again, Brady." "Yes, nice to have," he said as the dwarf left the room, "have met you. E-dwarf Susqua tells me that your human bodily functions read normal. Do you feel any ill effects?" "E-dwarf Susqua?" "Yes, the supervising doctor, as you might say. said Grok. Are you feeling well, despite the reading? You cut me up like a piece of sculpture and then ask if I feel all right? Very typical of your race, yes. Excessive reactions, runaway order. You found a better way? While the fundamental law is not strictly enforced by those in the perimeter, we do recognize it as yielding in truth and purpose. What does your fundamental law say about changing a human into a dwarf? The change was done for your own good. You could hardly function in our society looking as you did. Then you are bringing me back to Mergendorf. No one ever goes to Mergendorf. You come from Mergendorf, and now you tell me you can't even go back to your own planet. That is correct. The elders are the guardians. The elders require your presence, Brady. They know what is best, and we will follow. This vessel is in a guarding status over the Earth stations. We are the last vessel to leave your planet. The stations have been abandoned completely. I just don't understand any of this, confessed Brady. Brady, your race is becoming sophisticated in many ways. We would soon be detected in our guardianship status, said Grok as he moved his arms across his chest. Right. I have questions, Grok, Brady told him. That is why I have come to this conversion area. I want you to know about the blackouts I had. Why did I see everything my great-grandfather saw? I'm afraid that again is my doing. The memory synthesis had never been used on humans. I did not want to kill the young boy. He was an innocent party to all that had happened. I ordered the memory erasure so they would forget. It is used against dwarfs who do not follow the laws of Valrain. I can understand that, but what exactly happened? Hank Brady was expressing great indignation at the death of the boy. A human, like a dwarf, has a number of hormones that flow freely when anger sets in. The reaction of our synthesis with those hormones produced some kind of genetic transference. Transference? How is that possible? I don't know the terminology myself. I was told by personnel aboard ship that the memory patterns were produced in specific genes. Apparently the buildup of strong emotion triggers that memory through hormones. I thought I was going insane. I regret that very much. It was all done under my orders and against the law again. You're quite a maverick, Grok. Maverick? Just an Earth term. Has any of your line experienced blackout symptoms? I never heard of it, and I'm the last of my line. We also have read the letter and journal in your coat pocket. Your coming to Station 6 was very understandable. I am also sorry that you cannot return to Earth. The alternative, of course, would be death. I'm not so sure of that, said Brady. You should consider yourself fortunate, Brady. Your societies on Earth are all impulsive and obsessive in their pursuit of abundance. Mergendorf is a simple planet, guided by the fundamental laws of the elders of Valrain. We cherish peace and frugality. Not as strictly as the Earth people, but it is inculcated in our lives. What your race is headed for on Earth would never occur on Mergendorf. Ah, so that goes back to the date again, doesn't it? I will get to that. You would be brought to the perimeter of the Jambian system, a double star system of 12 planets and 42 moons. Oh, I've always wanted to go there, said Brady, but I never could afford it, he said with a half grin. Grok had little use for his sense of humor and continued. You Earth people have called the Javian suns by another name. In your ancient legends, Castor are the Gemini twins Pollux and Castor. And the perimeter? The perimeter is a vast protective network surrounding the entire system. And what about Mergendorf? Mergendorf is the fourth planet, although we do have dwarfs on the other planets. Purely for defensive purposes, mind you. And if you will forgive my forgetting Astronomy 101, how far is that from Earth? Approximately 47 of your light years. Oh boy, said Brady in frustration, moving his large body around so he was sitting directly in front of Grok. You must tell me about the date, Grok. Yes, the date, said Grok as he turned his back and started to walk around the room very slowly. Please listen closely to what I have to say. It's extremely important. I'm all ears, Commander. Your Earth is a typical planet. Typical planets compose only 3% of all known planets. There are stagnant planets where life forms do reach an intelligent level. 20% of all planets are stagnant. What's so typical about Earth? It's cyclical. What do you mean? It means if unobstructed, free from all interference, everything evolves to a certain point. Norelon is on an inevitable course with the War of Undoing. War of Undoing? He questioned, as he did not believe what the dwarf was saying. Concerted sequence of matter-weakening explosions, purely unknown to those manufacturing the weapons, said Grok slowly. An extension of your nuclear age, which lasted 40 years. All life and structure on the Earth's surface will be obliterated in 27 of your minutes, beginning at 11:34 on the morning of August 31st, 1992. If you are trying to scare me, Grok, I am not, he said honestly. Cracks of unimaginable width and fissures running the lengths of hemispheres will appear from the fire and heat of the initial vaporization. Magma and lava will explode furiously as sections of your planet are engulfed in a remodeling process. The scenario has been placed together in rough form. Some parts are missing, but it has essentially been deciphered. But the most important word, the word that will initiate the destruction, is the arpeg. We do not know its exact meaning, but it has taken us 300 years since we landed on your planet to acquire this information. Well, this is ridiculous. We can't develop such power in 30 or more years. And besides, scientists would know the information. It will never be tested thoroughly. But you just don't wipe out a planet without a trace. You have never witnessed the pre-detonation of a planet. The matter-weakening chain spreads outward in a ring from the blast, joining the other detonations. We saw it happen on Levian 3, and it's happened on Centus 4. The elders forbid tampering with your history and your Earth. Earth's history and accomplishments will all be destroyed. Your race's existence has been but a noble experiment that is about to come to an end. I don't understand how this could happen, said Brady. The War of Undoing, the essential essence, what you call the strong nuclear force. It's created between the essence of 14s and 19s. I don't understand. You call them mesons and nucleons. 14s must be within the diameter of a proton or neutron, what we call 7 and 5 essences. For an exchange to happen, if the essences can get this close, the exchange does occur. The particles will bind. If they are farther apart, the essential essence will be too weak, and other forces will move the essences apart. The formation of essences require a great deal of Gronfeld energy, like what is found in the stars. If you're trying to scare me, Grok, with things I don't understand, I am not. And you dwarfs are just going to stand by and let it happen, asked Brady. While we may not be strict adherents to the fundamental law, we still believe in its tenets, and that law dictates compliance to the fundamental law concerning the actual flowing of a history of a planet. If we have interfered, it would mean death to everyone on this vessel. The death of your vessel, Grok, against the death of my world. I would say that's more than an equal trade. Brady was becoming convinced that Grok was telling the truth. It is out of my realm, said Grok. The law is ancient and unyielding. I cannot, as much as I would like to, defy the law. Whose law? I don't understand this foolishness. The law is written and upheld by the elders of Lorraine. I don't care about your law. You destroyed that renegade ship. I remember it. 88 years ago. If you're so peaceful, haven't you violated your own laws? No, defense is vital to the principles of Lorraine. It sustains the principles of Lorraine. You see, defense is separate from the planet itself. It originates from the perimeter. I don't care about your laws. You have the ability. Use it and save my planet if this War of Undoing is going to happen. Brady stood and walked for the first time over to Grok. You seem to blame me or the Mergendorf for what your planet will reap upon itself. You do not understand us, Brady. Society must digress to sustain itself. Digress to frugality and the simple life. Damn your simple life. Damn your laws. People should do what they want to do. You fools can't see outside your own stupid laws. Can't you even think for yourself? Can't you even see the value of life over laws? Worlds will remain to take the course they wish. You will see that in time, assured Grok as he turned away. Yeah, free to destroy themselves. Their worth as beings in the universe will be wiped from view, as if they never existed. But that doesn't mean anything to you, does it, Grok? Grok pushed a button on his belt, and 3 security dwarfs rushed in from the outside. They had weapons and looked ready to use them at his discretion. Yes, Commander, asked the tallest dwarf. Bring Brady to his new quarters now. Under guard, eh, Grok? Asked Brady. Grok turned and looked at him for a few seconds and then left, not willing to discuss anything more with his displaced human. Days had passed and Brady was still inside his quarters. They had given him the contents of his suit, including the worn blue notebook he had used as a reporter. Over the days, he had learned to write with his new hands and used the Mergendorf version of a pen, a wide bar held by the thumbs with an outer loop holding the ink, which descended to a point.
Brady's journal, 35th day aboard this vessel. Another day, as far as I can determine, passes aboard this rigid and unyielding vessel. As a reporter, I feel compelled to transcribe my thoughts. After years of categorically denying the existence of extraterrestrials, I sit in a cabin on an alien ship soaring through space. From my world, I can see the universe before me. So much out there, so many worlds, billions of creatures all striving for existence. I am convinced now, in the light of the laws of Volraine, that the prime right of all creatures should not be the right to destroy themselves. Self-existence must be paramount. But the Mergendorfs do not seem to notice this fact. I thought at first it was just stubbornness. It goes further than pure obstinance. The laws of Volraine, the simple and peaceful life, are thoroughly embedded in their minds, as self-existence is in mine. My thoughts, all my thoughts, consuming every waking minute and hour, are concentrated on breaking their dogmatic attitudes. I gaze through the telescope they have given me. I zero in on the sun, now a mere pinhole of its former shape, and I assure myself that I will act. I have to act. I must get back to Earth and warn everyone of the war of undoing that will happen in less than 29 years. I constantly think of Lorna, back on Earth, and I pray that she's recovered from her gunshot wounds. She was right. Violence begets violence. Perseverance, Lorna.
There was a momentary disruption in the force field around Brady's room. He turned and stood as the field resumed its bright violet hue. Standing in front of the field was the ship's director, the dwarf, Antovian. Unlike most of the dwarfs, he was smiling broadly. "You're the director," said Brady as he closed his notebook. "It's good to see you. I don't have much company." "I thought as much," said the dwarf, but his words did not originate from his mouth. He was speaking telepathically as he put his hand on Brady's shoulder. "I have come to assist you in returning to your planet." "Your words. You're not speaking." "I am a dwarf who can speak telepathically," he said as his mouth was motionless. "Please, over to the window, Brady. Say no more. Your thoughts will be read by me." Brady looked at him skeptically and then concentrated. "Do all dwarfs have this ability?" he thought. "No. There are those related through the generations carrying this ability. My abilities are unknown to those aboard this vessel. If this is some trick by Grok..." "This is no trick, Brady. Listen carefully. I have, through my contacts elsewhere, assured the beginnings of a plan to warn your people of the cataclysm." "Just who are you? How the hell can you pull off something like that?" "You can trust me," he answered through his thoughts. "How?" thought Brady, and he shook his head. "I'm at wit's end, Antovian. My whole world will be wiped out, and nobody on that world knows anything about it. From what I've found of the dwarfs on this ship, they're entrenched in their own laws. I mean, I don't know if I can trust anyone." "We will be approaching the perimeter very soon. In the meantime, this area of space is filled with renegade small attacking crafts with high speed and maneuverability." "And you dwarfs engage them in defense of Volraine, am I right?" "Yes. The elders have prescribed the area surrounding the perimeter, 4,000 of your miles. This is the boundary. Violation by anyone other than the dwarfs means death. Therefore, they argue, our civilization is kept pure. And no extenuating circumstances. And you agree wholeheartedly." "No, I do not agree. That is my point, and that is why I am helping you. Just what is the so-called Law of Valrain? Brady wanted to know. There are 6 basic edicts. I'm surprised they haven't showered you with this. The edicts come from eons ago. They concern the structure of Mergendorf society. They are truth, obedience, simplicity, civility, defense, peace, and survival. Those are all words. Yes, they are mere words, with thousands and thousands of more words written about the meaning of those words. The one truth that you should remember is this: the elders proclaim that obedience is the key to a good life, and they have their memory machines about the planet to ensure obedience. Obedience leads to a good life, a life that is proper in simplicity and lack of excess. It is civil in structure for its own survival. The elders' way of life will be defended to the death. Peace, therefore, is a highly desirable goal, which is almost as close to existence itself, and the survival of the society Valrain. We know these basics as your people on Earth know the basics of their religions. The specifics are there and available when needed. Existence. You dwarfs should remember that one. The 7 edicts of Valrain apply only to the functioning of Mergendorf society. I have tried to tell you that I don't agree with them. I can understand your deep resentment toward this order, but it has existed from a time so long ago that even the Mergendorf cannot comprehend it. And you ask my trust. Why do you care about me anyways? Thought Brady. You don't understand. You are a salvation to me. I have been trapped in this society of conformity. Oh, it isn't as strict as those in the perimeter, but you are the first creature I have met in my entire life who shares the ideals of freedom. I have a saddened envy for your world, a world that can freely determine what it wants. Then you don't think Earth is excessive as the others do? I didn't say that, said the telepath in his thoughts. Grok is right when he calls your world a noble experiment. It, or most of it, grows according to the needs and power of its many societies. But as our lifespans are planned by Valrain law, your world has little checks. Yes, it is excessive, and that excess can lead to a final war. Your technology has surpassed your excess tendencies, and the end will come on August 31st, 1992, unless you return. Ah, that good old date. What else do you know about that date, Antovian? I only know what they learned at Station 6. Competing forces will vie for control of your world, and one word stands out. Arpeg, said Brady out loud. Yes, that is the word. Well, what does it mean? There is no such word in my vocabulary. Maybe the commander knows more. He told all officers that word holds meaning to the War of Undoing, he thought, and once again he put his hand on Brady's shoulder in Dorfian friendship. That is why it is imperative that you return to your Earth. But how? You said yourself we're near the perimeter. If I see an opportunity, I'll seize it. I must get back to Earth. Please, please. Your return to Earth lies within Valrain. Valrain? Yes. I have put my life at jeopardy to get you to Valrain. You see, the elders have only catered to the Mergendorf needs. They have never seen a human. Perhaps a human might change their minds. Might? I can't deal in mights, Antovian. I must return to Earth. The elders have the power to allow free and safe passage to Earth. How long will you wait? When we reach the perimeter. What exactly is this perimeter? I know it surrounds your systems. It is basically a geodesic structure. Space centers housing thousands are formed at the many junctures. They are connected by high-speed trams, and the spaces between the supports do not permit matter to pass through. Energy of all sorts, but not matter. Now, Grok has planned to take you to one of those juncture centers until he figures out exactly what he will do with you, he said, pausing. I will not let them take you there, my friend. What have they got planned at this center? They could strip your memory and put you into menial servitude. Not a very promising life, thought Brady. In fact, it's pretty unbelievable, he said out loud as he looked out the window. Please assure me that you will heed my words, Brady, said the dwarf. That, said Brady, turning, Nantovian, is up to you, because I am going to use something that doesn't exist in your culture. And what is that? My discretion. I respect you for that. Just remember, I am trying to help you. Thank you, I know that. I must go, Brady, said the dwarf out loud. Stay and view the stars. Take care, my friend Nantovian. Nantovian left the room, somehow disrupting the force field, passing the guards outside. Brady watched the field come on again, and he looked back at the stars. He gripped the telescope and pointed it toward the sun, that tiny scratch of yellow light in the universe. Tears came to his eyes, because although he could not see it, Earth was in this viewing range. It is Earth that he had known so well, an Earth that was rushing through space on a collision course with itself. A Nobel Experiment, Chapter 13. Sleep came easy for Brady after Nantovian left his cabin. Tired from the enormous burden upon him, he lay in a deep sleep for over 6 hours. But sleep did not last, and he was awoken by the light of a bright explosion near the hull of the Mergendorf vessel. He leaped from the little bed as the light was beginning to fade like spent fireworks. In the distance he saw what must have been several Rennigan Express flyers, violently spewing off white energy toward the Mergendorf ship. The pattern would remain constant as the energy traveled quickly toward the ship and hit the dense fields within the hull, exploding wildly in an attempt to punch a hole in the defenses. Most of the explosions had been out of his window's range. The next hurdle of energy, however, was shot across space and directly at him. He fell to the floor as it slammed against the outside surface of the ship, rocking it severely. Then another jolt hit just overhead. The lights grew dim and the force field hummed in a subdued lavender light. Lifting himself upward, he peered over the observation windowsill. The Mergendorf ship had responded with the same red light, kicking one of the elliptical flyers out of formation and forcing the others to retreat. Brady's first instinct was escape. He ran over to the diluted force field, sticking his hand forward and prepared to be knocked to the floor. He retracted his hand at once, feeling only a small but respectable voltage. A voltage that might be worth a few seconds of pain. Hurrying, as he did not want to miss the opportunity, he went back to the window. He looked at the field momentarily, realizing the power would probably come on any second, but also he was cognizant of the fact that he had to return to Earth. With a mighty thrust, he rocketed across the room like a broad jumper toward the pit. He hit the field and was slowly, by his momentum, lifted through it. The electricity soared through his body as he fell into the corridor and across the floor. Stunned and on the verge of losing consciousness, he staggered to his feet, shaking his head back to reality. His efforts had been none too soon as the field, in dim light, quickly crackled to full capacity. He looked both ways in the corridor and decided to go to the right. All the corridors were deserted. The dwarfs apparently had hurried to their stations during the Rennigan attack. Soon he heard footsteps, possibly a party of dwarfs coming down to check his status in the cabin. He did not have the luxury of time to contemplate his next move, and he slipped into a smaller hallway and waited. The clumping steps grew louder, and the two dwarfs with flutons passed directly by the lurking Brady. Like a bobcat ready for the kill, he sprang from his hiding place and grabbed for the fluton. He had surprised them as he firmly clutched the weapon and pulled it away. Before the second dwarf could draw his fluton, Brady had them both covered. He smiled with the cockiness of a frontier bandit as he moved toward them. "Drop it," he ordered. The other dwarf complied, and Brady picked up the weapon. "Okay, over to the chute, both of you." "Your actions will have little merit," said the dwarf who had dropped his fluton. "Shut up," he said, much to their surprise. "What I do is none of your business. Now move it." They walked briskly ahead of him, as he kept the spider-like weapons pointed directly at them. Upon approaching the chute, he spotted another prize. Paris had just entered the corridor. "Brady! Paris, drop your weapon or you're dead. What are you attempting to do?" asked the second-in-command as his round black eyes filled with fear. He dropped the weapon and Brady picked it up, adding to his arsenal. "Just get in the chute," ordered Brady with the weapon still drawn. "If you are attempting to take over this vessel," began Paris. Brady did not respond verbally at first, but rather he put both flutons on their maximum settings, which was a wide vaporization. "Well, Paris, perhaps I have been a little bit too hasty in my assessment," said Paris. He looked at the others and motioned them into the chute. "I want to be brought to Grok. The commander is in the Nexus." Brady ordered them to the Nexus. As the chute rose within the vessel, he could feel the tenseness in his hands. After all, he was the last hope of the final destruction of Earth, and if he were killed, so was Earth. His human heart thumped against his Dorfian chest as they moved upward in the blue light, rising to the bottom of the Nexus. Brady looked around the room. Directly in front of the Nexus was a semi-circular viewing window comprising the entire wall. Above him was a luminous aqua ceiling and a light-colored carpet below. He pushed his prisoners to the edge of the viewing window as Grok stood some 25 feet away on an elevated triangular platform at the end of the room. "I have your second-in-command, Grok," yelled Brady as he put one of the flutons to Paris's head. "Please feel free to comply, Commander," said Paris. "The weapon is set to vaporize." Brady pointed the other weapon outward as he studied the room. From the edges of the semicircular window were elevated alcoves on each side, each with a mass of instrumentation below a smaller viewer. Armed dwarfs, undoubtedly controlling parts of the vessel, were stationed at each alcove. The alcoves ran along the walls to Grok's elevated platform and then converged to a point behind it. "Everyone that has a weapon, drop it," said Brady loudly as he caught sight of Antovian's brutal stare. No one in the room, however, moved to his command. Brady then chose to scream in a manner they were unaccustomed to hearing. "You don't think I'll use this? I will kill you all before I'm through, one by one." "Throw your weapons forward," said Grok. Brady moved toward him, dragging Paris as he picked up the weapons. Grok leaned on the forward console above Brady. "Just what do you think you're going to accomplish, Brady?" asked Grok. "I'm going to accomplish a future for my planet, Grok. Turn this thing around, bring it back to Earth so I can warn my people." "I cannot do that. The law, I've had it with your laws. If you value your own life and the lives of your crew, you will do as I say." "It is not the Volranian law I speak of, Brady. There are renegade vessels in this area. To move backward through an area we have just come through would risk another encounter with those vessels." "I'm not going to fall for your tricks, Grok." "I cannot do it, Brady. I have the flutons, Commander. You will do it, or I'll kill everyone aboard this ship." Grok raised his hand to his mouth, rubbing both thumbs along the teeth plate as he thought. As he slowly blinked his eyes, he pleaded with Brady one more time. "I will have to ask you to reconsider, Brady, please. You're only hurting yourself if this vessel is destroyed." "You have 10 seconds, said Brady as he kept the fluton aimed at Paris's head. "Then I will kill him." Grok didn't seem to doubt Brady's threats. He could not allow his friend, and most probably the entire Nexus, to be killed. Risking a return into space seemed now less of a threat. "Very well," he said. "Dorf, Antovian, set a course for the vessel back to Earth." Yes, Commander," said the telepath as he went inside his alcove and began programming the change. He turned to Grok. "Course is set in, Commander." The stars in front of the viewer and the tiny alcove viewers began to swing by the turning vessel. Brady, quite familiar with the stars by now, gazed ahead until he spotted the sun. He quickly spun around and saw the frightened looks upon their faces. They knew he was an alien within one of their own bodies, a creature not of their world, with strange ways and radical thoughts. They felt as a human would feel if his ship had been seized by an alien entity. Brady sensed this and took full advantage of the situation. "Everyone up by the viewer and sit down," he outed, pushing Paris forward and then moving off to the side. They scampered up from their respective positions and moved up front, sitting under the window as he had instructed them. Grok, not surprisingly, remained on his platform, leaning forward against the instrument panel. "You too, Commander. How long do you think you're going to hold this vessel, Brady? 5, 10, 24 of your hours?" "As long as I have to," said Brady as he moved toward them with both flutons drawn. "The Mergendorf day is 39 hours long. You will tire before we do," said Grok as he slowly walked along the console and down the stairs. "I can wait," replied Brady boldly as Grok walked by him. He climbed the stairs to the platform and looked down on the Nexus personnel. There was a chair on movable tracks in front of thousands of instruments on Grok's panel. With the dwarfs below, watching Brady's every move, he sat in the chair, pointing his weapons forward like artillery onto a distant hill. He was, without much forethought, prepared to wait. But the hours took their toll on Brady, and both flutons grew heavy. His eyes were sore and his muscles ached. Most of the dwarfs were sleeping under the viewing window as the Mergendorf vessel moved farther away from its perimeter. Those dwarfs who were awake were rather lethargic, with the exception of Grok and Paris. Grok's eyes continuously trained on Brady. He must have known it was only a matter of time before Brady could not be able to handle the fatigue. They all seemed to remain patient, amazed that Brady had gone as far as he had. The unusual pace was broken by several popping sounds from the communications alcove. Brady perked up as Grok moved forward. "Those processors are signaling an advisory," stated the commander as he climbed the stairs to the alcove. "What advisory?" asked Brady, bouncing up from the chair and trotting down the steps. Grok's lips were vibrating in an atypical manner. Brady could readily discern that gesture was the one the Mergendorf employed to express their displeasure. "I won't tolerate any tricks, Grok," taunted Brady as he pointed the flutons toward the alcove. Grok was unimpressed at this point. "We must take evasive action," he said from the communications alcove. "We'll just increase speed, Grok," ordered Brady. "It will be that much sooner we get back to Earth." Grok's lips were no longer buzzing, but he did raise his voice for the first time. "Don't be a fool! In another few minutes we'll all be dead," he said, waiting for a response. But Brady was in a paradoxical situation. Grok rose from the chair and walked down the stairs of the alcove. "Brady, we must reverse course and head back to the perimeter while there's still time. They have backups, and there's no doubt we'll be destroyed." "No, I won't go back up there," said Brady unequivocally. "Then you tell me," said Grok as he walked down the stairs and up to Brady. "What do we do? Let ourselves be attacked?" "Distance," said Paris from the alcove above. 100,000 miles. "Brady, no," said Brady, raising his weapons at Grok. "They will attack us in less than 30 seconds. Release this vessel," said Grok as his lips began to buzz again. "No." "Then you'll have to kill us all," cried Grok as he walked by the pointed flutons and up to his platform. His crew came down timidly and returned to their original stations. "Director," Grok ordered Antovian, "bring us around. Pusher, maximum power." "Maximum power when course is implemented." "Any signals from the enemy craft?" "Negative, Commander," said the dwarf from the front alcove. "Paris, it's time to attack." 8 seconds, Commander," answered Paris. "Paris, fire every Fluton battery." "Commander, that will diminish our speed to—" "I said fire!" shouted Grok as he stood. Paris turned quickly and released all of the vessel's energy to the incoming Rennigan Express flyers. The Mergendorf vessel lurched in space, the light of the Nexus dimming as the massive concentration of red energy twisted into space like a tidal wave. The speed of the ship slowed dramatically, drifting thousands of miles beyond the energy. "Level 3, instructed Grok as Paris increased the magnification of the window. The energy rolled forward in a wide but deadly dispersion. The wily Rennigan ships attempted to change their course, but the energy was on them too quickly, sizzling the darting vessels into ash. "Searcher, scan space. Any sign of hostile vessels?" asked Grok. "Space is clear, Commander." "We are at 1/2 normal velocity, Commander." "Thank you," said Grok as he turned to his second-in-command. "Paris, how long will the energy field remain destructive?" "For another," Paris said as he looked at his monitors, 6.5 hours. "Searcher, send out a warning to any of our vessels in the area," said Grok confidently as the situation was now under control. He looked down at Brady, who had been easily disabled by the guards in the crisis. "Grok, you brought us within seconds of death because of your excessive Earth-like actions. You, my friend, will learn the law." As back in the alcove, Antovian bowed his head. "The perimeter is less than 5 days away at this speed. You will make good use of that time in the Volranian instruction." "I had to try," said Brady, twitching in his dwarfen nose as the guards held him, "and I will try again." "You know little of the truth of the universe. Your opinions are distorted by a gluttony of spirit. Bring him back to his room. I want a constant check on that energy restraint in the doorway and 3 guards outside the door." The guards brought the subdued Brady to the chute in the forward part of the room, and they quickly descended from view. Paris walked over to Grok's platform and looked into his commander's eyes. "Commander, why do you insist on allowing that human to cause such difficulties? Is taking them to the elders that important?" "Yes, it is that important. He will not give us any more difficulty, Paris. He will learn our ways and know the law of Volrain." "Commander, I think you should kill him now. And Paris, I am in command of this vessel." A Nobel Experiment, Chapter 14. The disabled Mergendorf vessel, traveling at a fraction of its full capacity, was finally approaching the Janvian system. The perimeter, because of its overwhelming size, was almost non-existent. Glistening silver supports faded into the blackness of space, and the gold junctions appeared to hang in the dark as the vessels came closer. In the distance, tiny red trams could be seen moving like bugs along invisible supports, and centered inside the perimeter were the Janvian suns, glowing steadily in the darkness. Grok sat pensively at the point of the triangular table in the lower conference room. He gazed at the double star on the miniature window screen. Although the planets were invisible at that distance, his mind was nevertheless fixed on the 4th planet, Mergendorf. His thoughts, like all the planets around the binary stars, were winding on an erratic course. He was asking himself now why he had brought Brady aboard the vessel. Responsibility for the human's altered life was one factor, but the respect of the traditions of Valerian law was even more important to a perimeter dwarf like Grok. His crew members, having convened the meeting, came in the room and sat around the table. They stared at their tormented commander and were deeply suspicious of Brady's preferential treatment. "Well?" asked Grok as he looked up at them. The vessel's Edorf pusher spoke first. "Commander, it is our opinion that the human should not have been brought on board at all." Grok locked his lips tightly before he spoke. "I deem that necessary, Leisure. I am the one who gave the orders to pursue the Rennigan vessel so many years ago. I am the one who ordered their human memories to be submerged. It is my fault that one of them was killed and the other mutated so he passed information down through his genetic structure. The human, Bill Brady, has suffered because of my actions. I am showing him a better life." "It should be pointed out," said Paris. "I feel it is my obligation as your friend and comrade to state the law. The laws are quite specific, Commander. Brady's presence aboard this vessel would constitute a cessation of command rank and military privilege not only for yourself, but for all the officers aboard this vessel. The alien, in this case a human, would be brought to Volrain for disposition." "That is why," demanded Grok as he stood and faced them, "the elders must never know about Brady. Can't we see it's preferable for a human to mend his ways? That is why I ordered the transformation. That is why he has been under intensive training. I assure you he will never set foot beyond the perimeter. They do not have to know," he said, pausing for a brief time. "We have orders to rendezvous at Station 62. The vessel will be refitted and supplied. In less than a month, we will leave for the Drever system. We will keep Brady hidden until that time. Commander, we will not be in the Drever system forever. Brady has a mind, Paris told him. A mind to be changed for the better. In time, he will never know his past. He will be one of us and live a preferable life compared to what he had on Earth, said Grok as he looked at each of their faces. Lastly, gazed into Antovian's eyes. You have not voiced your opinion. You are my commander. It is my duty to follow your orders, stated the telepath. Well, that's the attitude to take, said Grok as he rose. Now, if there are no more questions. Excuse me, Commander, said the searcher. Station 62 confirms our arrival. The administrator, Dorf Gubston, is standing by to speak to you. Tell him I have other problems, said the guilt-ridden commander. He had violated the law repeatedly, doing what he thought was right. As he looked at the stares of his fellow officers, he tempered his thinking. Very well, searcher, put him on.
Commander, the elders,
said the dwarf in an official greeting. And long live the Valrain legacy, said Grok as he looked at the older dwarf who was showing signs of light orange in his blue hair. Dorf Gubston, this is Commander Grok. What can I do for you?
I was just confirming some clearance for your vessel. You have been away a long time, Commander.
Yes, and we will be moving out as soon as possible, said Grok.
So I have been told. That is why we have prepared a dinner for you. Just a quiet atmosphere, you and your second in command.
Ah, yes, said Grok, realizing it would be a distraction. We would be honored, Dorf Gubston.
Excellent. Dinner will be served within the hour, Commander. We will see you then.
Yes, of course, said Grok as the screen went blank and he stared at it. They all knew what was on his mind, and Paris spoke again. Commander, I speak for the officers assembled when I say we have the most unflinching loyalty to you and to your decisions. We thought it proper to discuss the human situation and advise you of the laws. However, we will respond without question to any orders you have to issue. Thank you, Paris, said Grok. I appreciate the vote of confidence. Now let us prepare to dine with Dorf Gubston and put this human out of our minds. Brady watched the shuttle ship leave for the planet. The computer processor had become his sole authority. Its deep echoing voice cracked through the air around his tortured mind, filling his head with what Grok called the truth. Hours and hours of drilling and food deprivation had left him weakened. His wrists and ankles were red, the remnants of an earlier struggle to escape the leather-like restraints. Time, taking its ever-draining effect on him, was made even more scathing by an overhanging needle pointing to the center of a disc. An incorrect response by Brady sent a brisk charge of electricity downward to his head, and each wrong answer increased the current. 5 days had passed since the guards brought him back to the room. Even though he knew the processor did not speak the truth, he was beginning to weaken, and in order to survive, he elicited the responses it wanted to hear.
You will explain why simplicity is the key to existence.
Brady, sweating, looked upward toward the needle with a human determination in his Mergendorf eyes, and began to think of an appropriate Mergendorf response. Existence is the very essence of the Dorfian mind and soul. It is the basic level which other ascending levels subsist. But existence without simplicity, the absence of complexity, and the ignorance of progress is not existence at all, he said as he paused and looked out the window and repeated the words he had memorized. It is excess. Progress produces excess. In thoughts, in food, in clothing, society itself becomes an excess. Excess is forbidden.
And why is this?
Demanded the computer. It is forbidden because the elders say it will lead to a slicing of existence. Existence will be threatened by forces beyond the self. Existence will no longer be maintained. Without existence, there can be no peace, no defense, no civility, no simplicity, no obedience, no truth. No truth, he repeated, raising his voice in a crescendo. No truth! Repeat. No truth! No truth, he screamed, more in defiance than the actual belief as the sweat stung his eyes. He let his head fall to the side and he closed his eyes in pain. Time period of 15 minutes will be granted to you. You will contemplate the law in silent meditation. 15 minutes. Son of a bitch, he mumbled under his breath. He looked up and squinted from the salt in his eyes. For an instant, the purple energy restraint around the doorway seemed to grow dim. Perhaps he was hallucinating. In front of the room, a singular figure appeared in the purple haze. Antovian could sense Brady's pain. With a waving motion, he looped a wire device through the air, producing a bright yellow light. He had cut the influence of the computer. Brady opened his eyes and smiled as his friend walked over and disconnected the restraints. Brady staggered to his feet, still in discomfort. "Antonian, the computer," he said, rubbing the skin that had been irritated by the restraints. "The computer is off. The Stanzos field will keep it neutralized. We must hurry. They are waiting for us on the trams." "Who is waiting?" asked Brady as Antovian cut the energy restraint with the same loop. "Who?" he asked again as they ran into the corridor and passed 3 unconscious guards. "I am talking about my contacts," said Antovian, answering Brady's question. "Now let us hurry." "Sorry about taking over the ship. It was an excessive," he said as he thought as they ran. He had used the word just as the computer had taught him. "I mean, it was foolhardy." "The past is inconsequential, Brady," said the dwarf as they stepped into the chute. "Do not dwell on it. We have the future to contend with, and that is more than enough for me." Antovian had planned the escape from the vessel and had used his position as an officer to bring Brady onto Station 62 with no suspicion. They boarded a 2-car tram and sped away from the station at enormous velocity. Brady lay down on a sofa inside the pale green car. "I must apologize to you, Brady," said Antovian, "but we had to leave the vessel and get aboard this tram. Are you feeling all right?" "Keep looking for that needle," said the fatigued Brady as he rubbed his eyes. "I regret the procedures taken by the commander. They are only used in severe cases of disobedience. He was doing what he perceived to be the correct action." He didn't have to answer the computer. "Call it excess or what you will. I'd just like to go back there and disassemble every circuit and stomp on the remains," he said as he thought. "That is what I want to do." But the computer was not all that wrong. "What do you mean, Brady?" "Carrying forth my thoughts would be an excess. Maybe if I had the chance, I would no longer carry out those thoughts. They're needless." "Commendable. The law is not without redeeming value. It is the unyielding restrictions on the lives of the Mergendorf people which I object to." "I'm not sure," said Brady, still thinking. "I can think those thoughts and any thoughts, but I don't have to carry out the actions. I can use restraint," he observed as he looked toward Antovian. "You don't know what it was like when I was on Earth. I carried out all my thoughts. I showed no restraint." "And you think the past weeks have changed all that?" "I don't know. I don't know. I suppose I've changed, probably because I've been asking questions." "Remember the law, Brady, but only as a reference. It may help your life." "My life? Obviously, you have something planned because my life is in shambles." "Be assured we have already taken the first step back to your Earth. My trusted friends are in a tram some distance ahead. They have a transportation device which will split us to the surface without detection." "Split?" "A dual beam. You see, our passages have been arranged by those who believe in the same freedom that we do." "Freedom. Freedom," repeated Brady. "A wide open word. Freedom to strive. Freedom to live. Freedom to destroy a world." "That will not happen. We will meet the revered ones in a village in the northern regions, the village of Wawi. This will help us secure the road to Valrain." "These revered ones, if they are part of Valrain, why would they bother to help us?" "They have been assured by my other contacts that we are villages from Wawi, seeking counsel with the elders." "Ha, the elders will be killed for sure." "No, they will listen. As I have told you, there have been exceptions to the interpretation of the actual flowing of a history of the planet. You didn't tell me that. Antovian looked away, aware of his mistake. Want to give you false hope until my plans were actuated. Well, what are the exceptions? Extraordinary hearings centuries ago. A world that threatened to split the fabric of the galaxy itself. Then it is survival, isn't it? That's the key. They threaten the survival of the laws of Bahrain by threatening the galaxy. That is the exception, correct? Yes, there are others. Those who normally would not be prone to excess were driven out by forces out of their control. Heron 3 and Dassam 6, you, Brady, must convince the elders that technological forces have overwhelmed your planet, and with the proper knowledge you can repent that excess behavior. You see, an alien such as yourself has never argued before the elders. Vessel commanders and others have spoken for races, but never an alien alone. And just what is that record? You mentioned successes, but what about the failures? Brady, he said, putting his hand on the human shoulder. Speaking to the elders is your only hope at this point. If you can get me to Mergendorf, why not just get me a ship to Earth? Defenses would destroy it. You wouldn't stand a chance, replied Antovian. I have no choice other than trusting you, but I still question your motives, said Brady. Why would you risk all that you have? To save your world, of course. Ah, but there has to be more, said the doubting Brady, raising his index finger. As you say, Antovian, it's all inconsequential right now. Yes, we will be arriving at the next tram very soon. In the meantime, I can get you some food. Ah, good old Mergendorf food. Potent stuff. I've had better food at the Food Hop on Van Buren Street. Van Buren? Chicago, Antovian. Chicago. All of a sudden it looks like paradise. Our food is that bad. Oh no, it's just a little rich. At least it works. Yes, we could have dissimilar digestive systems, observed Antovian as he went to get the food. After Brady had finished the meal, they moved in the front of the tram. As they looked out the observation deck, it seemed as if they were on a single spoke of the perimeter. It was so vast that they appeared to be right out in deep space, and it was only when the other tram came into view they gained some sense of perspective. The two trams locked, and Antovian and Brady crossed into the other car. Javik, Methab, smiled Antovian as they came inside. The two dwarfs were dressed in brilliant gold robes with blue rope belts. Antovian put his hand on each of their respective shoulders. My friends, this is the human, Bill Brady. Gentlemen, smiled Brady. His reporter's instinct made him take notice of their every move and of the surroundings. Our hopes are with you, Brady. We desire that you be successful with the elders. Brady was not looking at them. He was studying the two cone-like tunnels to the rear of the two dwarfs. Is that the beam splitter? Yes, said Javik. You will be on the planet in less than 10 minutes after you enter the cone. You will, of course, need villagers' clothing, said Methab. Methab walked over to a small table and picked up a suede-looking green suit, held together by rawhide threads down both sides. Here, even though you have the clothing, Antovian, you must be careful in your ways. The planet is much more strict. Respect the village life. A military defector would soon be noticed by the villagers. And what does that defection warrant? Asked Brady. Life, long servitude on a mining planet, answered Antovian. Not an enlightening prospect, said Brady. No, not indeed.